Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I want to show you a few video clips first about what I'm talking about here. I just want to do a brief introduction and then come back and do a voiceover about that. No one knows what Trump's going to do. And not that he's not predictable, not that we don't know who he is, but nobody knows really what he's going to do. But we'll get into that because we know that because that's what's predictable about Trump, and I'll explain that in a moment. Tim Walz may be running in 2028 based in have this microphone. You heard that word bass was not didn't was kind of fuzzy or kind of staticky. And I have this mic, handholds a mic that has a receiver plugged into my computer, and it's got a blue light representing the on light and 4 green lights representing how strong the signal is. And the 4 green lights are always there, the Bluetooth signal. But once in a while, the green lights flash because there's some sort of interference. And today there seems to be a lot of it. And I try to watch the green lights while I'm talking, but sometimes I don't. And so if there's some kind of audio issues, it's because of that. It's happened the past 6 months. Like, I've been using this microphone, same kind of microphone, for over a year. I've switched out the microphone. I thought it had something to do with the device that connected the Bluetooth device, but it isn't that. If somebody knows about it, you could let me know. But if you really know about it, just don't say stuff like you have, I saw this article or whatever. Somebody explained it to me, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. It was too technical. But anyways, I got all these great things to get to. This is going to be an epic video. I could feel all these things folding in together. There's a lot of delusion around Trump, both on the right and the left, and people, making their own personal Jesus out of Trump or their personal devil out of Trump, right? And making him into something he's not. But even with that, he is fairly unpredictable in the sense that he's very random, and he's not really passionate about anything politically. He doesn't have some, axe to grind. I mean, he has his own personal stuff now that has to do with him and the court cases, whatever. But what he's going to do, we're not sure. And so let me show you the clips first, and then we'll come back to this.
Illegal orders. Trump has said he would use the military in, to put it charitably, non-traditional ways. He told Time magazine he would have, quote, no problem using the military, unquote, in his plans for mass deportation. And also in the last few weeks, he said this.
We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're the big, and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Okay, so this would be a bad thing. If you're a Trumper, you got to realize he has talked about this in several different ways. The possibility of turning the military on U.S. citizens. It doesn't matter if they're crazy left-wing people, your enemies, or any of this other, type of rhetoric that you might come up with. There's a law against it called posse comitatus, right? And if Trump were to do this, and he said he was wanting to do this and willing to do this, and I'll explain why you can't take what he says at face value, so we'll get into that as well. But if he were to do this, if he were to impose some sort of form of martial law to go after what seems to be political opponents, it would be a horrible thing. And there's more here to the, let's watch the rest of this, and I'll come back to that. But, he said it here, right? He said it, that he was willing to turn the military, and that would be a horrible thing, and we'll come back to that.
Let's go now to the Pentagon and CNN's Natasha Bertrand. And Natasha, what scenarios are defense officials preparing for, and how are they gaming this out?
Well, Jake, top of mind for defense officials here who we've spoken to, of course, is how Trump is going to wield U.S. military power here at home. Is he going to make good on his previous pledges to potentially deploy active duty U.S. troops to American cities to engage in domestic law enforcement and to help with his mass deportation plan? That is something that officials here have been discussing in terms of how they would actually respond to that. What would a response look like if the president were to actually order active duty troops to these cities to engage in this kind of domestic law enforcement? And if he did, a former senior military official who served under Trump said that that would be very significant. It is not something that the president would be able to necessarily water down to the American people. It would be, quote, a very big deal. And another thing that officials here are gaming out is, of course, what is going to happen if Donald Trump reinstates an executive order known as Schedule F, which would essentially reclassify a large amount of apolitical civilian employees across the federal government, including here at the Pentagon, and allow them to be more easily fireable. That is something that defense officials here are scrambling to address before he enters office, trying to kind of whittle down the list of people who would be at risk of being moved into that category, because of course they're trying to create, as minimal of a disruption as possible to the day-to-day operations here. But clearly they are concerned. They're having these conversations about whether there would be resignations, for example, if an unlawful order were issued, and importantly, what the chain of command would look like if Trump did issue that kind of order to deploy those active duty forces.
Okay, so let's get into the martial law first. And I want to explain Trump as a person, how his psychological makeup works, how he is owned and worked and handled differently than other people. He's still an asset, he's still a puppet, but they have to handle him differently, and how arbitrary is, right? And how he does things on limited information, and how both sides have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and from someone who doesn't, I don't have any emotional feelings towards him. There's a little bit of a disgust ever since he did what he did with Operation Warp Speed and how he got worked. And that's an example of you never know what Trump's going to do. And he's very predictable in the sense of how they're able to handle him and work him. But let's get into the other thing first here. Okay, so Passa Comitatus, martial law, is a horrible thing. And so back when the Cubies were in their heyday, and they believed that I don't know if it was RFK Jr., but maybe John Kennedy was really faked his death, and he was going to come back and be Trump's vice president. And Trump had been groomed and prepared his whole life to work for the forces of good that were taking down the deep state. And there was tens of thousands of sealed indictments that was going to put away all these people at deep state. And that people like Tom Hanks and other people that, were thought to be bad people with limited information, with nothing conclusive. I mean, some things, obviously, but not the kind of, stuff that was being said about him, were being rendered and taken to Guantanamo Bay for secret military tribunals, and they weren't getting their due process. And these were supposed to be patriots. These were right-wing people that were supposed to uphold the Constitution. And they're so dumb, so fucking stupid, that they would give up their rights to due process. Because if you give it up to give it up for one person, let's say you take the evil person in the world, Jeffrey Epstein or somebody like that everyone agrees is a piece of shit, and you violate his constitutional rights, and you bend the law and you break the law, that means that they can do it for everybody. And if they're taking people to a secret military base and doing military tribunals without giving these people due process, you've given away fucking something that's huge. Like, just stupidly. And you call yourself a patriot and somebody who's loves America and into the Constitution. And so it was really bad what they were saying, right? And I said, this is really, really stupid. You guys are really, really stupid for thinking that this would be a good thing. Do you guys remember in what was ended up being the sixth and only really, to me, good movie of the Star Wars, whatever it is, 9 movies? It's the one where Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, transforms into Darth Vader. And you had this guy who was the Sith Lord, who was a politician in some sort of, democracy like Congress. And he used false flag, basically terrorists that he controlled to create havoc and then get people to get rid of the chancellor, the guy who was the chancellor, who was like the president in charge of the democracy, right? It was more like a prime minister in the British Parliament. It was that kind of a setup, right? At the same time, he went up to this place where they clone people, and he had them clone one of the Boba Fett's or one of these MNFers, bounty hunters, and he turned them into this clone army that we know from the stormtroopers. And nobody knew, and Anakin Skywalker found it. I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi found these guys, right? And the clone army, and he turned them over to the government, right? That was now run by the Sith Lord that nobody knew. And then he had an army that was gifted to him, like, and he created the army, but no one knew it. And then the Jedi turned it over to him, and now he had this army that became the army of the Empire, right? And so he did all these false flag type of things and manipulated the government, and then turned it over to, he had his side as chancellor, and then he had his real, what he really was as a Sith Lord. And it was an excellent, in terms of truth or narratives, it was a great way of displaying how these things work, right? And the same thing can be said about Trump and martial law. Because once you break posse comitatus, you're going to have military on the streets forever. And Trump is only going to be around for 4 years, if that. And whoever's the next guy, whether it's J.D. Vance, who God knows, that twisted, fucked up dude with his weird, he's just a weird, fucked up dude, or the next Democrat, whoever that might be, will then have the ability to have martial law. And the president can't be prosecuted based on Trump's ruling from the Supreme Court. That the president can do whatever they want, and they can't face the legal ramifications for that. And that's fucked. I mean, that should never have happened. Even though, you guys are Trumpers, just for Trump. And Trump has sold you dumbasses so much of this bullshit. And you don't get it, like the Trumpers, that it's, no matter what power Trump gets as president, it could have been, it's going to be turned over to the next Democrat. There'll be almost assuredly a Democrat after that. And so what they're doing is getting rid of all these things that made America what it is. And when they're gone, like, you don't appreciate them now because you've never seen what it is to be on the opposite end of that. There's reasons why these things exist. And the president being able to be prosecuted, not like some royal king that's above the law, right? That's, viewed as God's representative on earth, like the royal family is. I mean, they go out there, they're inaugurated, and they carry an orb and a scepter that represents that they're God's representative on earth. They're doing God's will. And so therefore they're above the law. And that's what you don't want. That's what they got rid of, right? The president should totally be prosecuted, and there should never be any martial law. But once it's there, it's there. Once it's being used, when you put military on the streets, you're going to see a completely different America. And it's going to suck for you, and you're going to be like, what happened? I don't know, it was Trump. Fucking Trump. And so if he does this, it's a horrible thing. The other thing is this part about him being able to fire anybody. Trump is such an arbitrary person, and we know he's such a weak piece of shit when it comes to like what he did with the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. Somebody posted some shit on Facebook that ended up, the person who posted it was about a neighbor who lost her cat, and she said, probably the Haitians are eating it. And that went around, and the right wing grabbed onto it because it was an anti-legal immigrant thing. And they posted a bunch of bullshit about it, even though they were told by the city manager and these other people that this problem didn't exist. And it was Republicans that told them that. But they went with it anyway. These pieces of shit, J.D. Vance and Trump, sparking fear. Again, Trump isn't going into Springfield, Ohio and protecting the cats. And he said it on the debate stage, and it was one of the worst moments. It was funny. They're eating the dogs, right?
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
And so this turned out to be blatantly false, but even if it was true, Trump didn't know it was true because he had no solid data or information, no confirmation of it. And that's why he's a real piece of shit. He's a piece of fucking shit because as a person who has influence over people, in my minor influence here, I don't want to turn people against Haitians, for example, something like that, without having solid data or knowledge. And even then, it would only be a few people. You know, the whole Haitian community that's there in Springfield, Ohio, based in Springfield, Ohio, having a need for workers. That's where they came from. They didn't just, the government didn't drop them there. A lot of them were there back when Trump was president. And so that's just complete lies, right? And it's irresponsible. And Trump says shit like that and does shit like that on limited information. I'll get into that as we go through the rest of these clips. I want to show you the opposite side as well, coming up here with the, you know, the crazy liberals and all their false beliefs about Trump, right? And so Trump says and does dumb shit, right? Based in no information, arbitrary emotional decisions. And if he's going to fire people who maybe criticize the government or criticize him and then impose martial law, this is possible. Like, this is something, I'm not sure Trump's going to do it. He might do it. And he's talked about it. And so the other piece of this is Trump just says shit, and because he's just got no filter and with no information and no passion behind it. And he forgets about 10 minutes later, but other people clip it and they show it. And he's like, did I say that? Like, he's gone on stage and said, did I say that? Like, he's done that a lot, right? He doesn't even know what he's fucking talking about. And so that's another reason you don't know, because he just rambles and he doesn't, you know, focus on what he's saying. And he does it on based on, you know, not being aware of, like, he's a little Lord Fauntleroy, but has been sitting in some ivory tower. And he doesn't understand how the world works for other people. He doesn't understand the importance of what the president says. And so it's funny. I like it. Like, it's entertaining to me. But, you know, it creates a lot of fear and, you know, anxiety or a lot of hope when it shouldn't be there. And I'll come back to that because there's other stories I got. So let's go to this thing with Sean Hannity and some other stuff here. I got 3 things to show you about the left and their TDS. Like, you have Trumpers who have Trump derangement syndrome because they believe Trump is, you know, some kind of reincarnation of Jesus. And you have the left that believe he's some sort of, you know, religious devil or some right-wing devil. And neither of these, narratives is true. We all know that. Anybody who has half a brain knows it, right? Okay, as you guys will see later on in the video, I end up finding that little old video of the guy adding fluoride and then them showing the whole neurotoxin aspect of it, the poisonous part of it, right? And when I found that video, YouTube recommended this one, so I'm going to go back. I haven't started to edit yet, and I'm going to put this with the other video. But this is what they're worried about, and some of these fears are justified. I'm going to show you things that aren't justified in terms of these women saying they're going to remain celibate because men voted Trump in and men have taken away their reproductive rights, right? Like, and that Trump is going to have a national ban on abortion, all these things that Trump's not going to do, and just the panic. So I have stuff that the liberals are saying that Trump certainly isn't going to do, but this is something that he might do, right? And he's already talked about it. You never know with him, and that's the whole point of this video.
Donald Trump wants generals who are loyal to him, and now the Pentagon is preparing for what could be a major upheaval, according to the Washington Post. Amid fears Donald Trump will at some point follow through with his plans to, quote, deploy the military domestically against American citizens, demand fealty from key leaders, and attempt to remake the nonpartisan institution into one explicitly loyal to him. Joining us now, former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and special assistant to the Secretary of the Navy, Mark.
Okay, so this is a legitimate fear, right? Because he's talked about it. Like, he said he's going to do these things, and it's kind of the thing that Donald Trump will do. We don't need to listen to these guys, but you get the general idea here that this is a legitimate concern by the Democrats and the media. They have a lot of illegitimate concerns about Trump, but this is the one that, and it should be for all of us, because, you know, passe comitatus. Okay, so I dislike Sean Hannity and I dislike Fox News in a different way than I dislike CNN and MSNBC. But they're doing great coverage of the liberal meltdown. And so I've been watching it a lot. And I have my, sometimes when I'm watching TV, I might be watching something I recorded, and then I delete the recording, and it goes back to whatever channel I was watching before. and oftentimes it's going back to Fox. And every time it goes back to Fox that I'm watching, there's something about the liberals they're mocking or whatever, the post-election reaction. So they must be doing it. They must be like 80% of their content right now. And this is great. So they showed this part.
I didn't make it up. I promise. Take a look.
Stop talking to men. Divorce your husbands. Leave your boyfriends. Leave them. They don't give a about you. And
You know what? I think whatever husband or boyfriend you might have, if you have one, TikTok girl, dump him. Dump him is her thing. Would be a blessing, right? Any man that you're with would be blessed by you leaving him.
I promise you, come over to this side. I will bake cookies. I will shave your head.
There's no way
She must be batting for the other team.
I am letting any man near me for the next few years. I've been happily single for the past 4 years.
Okay, so you've been single for 4 years, happily, and you're not going to let a man near you because they're just beating down your door. I mean, you've been single by your choice for the past 4 years, and now you're going to add another 2 years to it. And humanity is going to suffer for it. Not humanity. Mankind is going to suffer for it. You're not letting men near you is some sort of a punishment to men? Are you serious?
I can wait another 4 years.
Good, do it. But why did you wait the first 4 years when Biden was president? Why are you waiting? So are you going to wait whether it's a Democrat or a Republican?
I also have decided that for the next 4 years, I am going to abstain from schmex with men.
It doesn't.
Schmex. She's not going to do any more schmex with men. And that's, somehow hurting men. Like, all these women are, like, major red flags, right? Just, like, from this. I mean, any man who would want to be with any of these women in any capacity is, like, some kind of dude that wants to be abused, right? Like, it would be freaking torture. These are major deal breakers and red flags just from their reaction here.
Matter if you take away abortion, like, we'll want to have your babies even less, right?
She doesn't want to have your baby, this woman. They don't want to have men's babies anymore. Like, this idea that men want to get you pregnant. This came out with that show on Hulu, whatever that show was. I covered it before. It's just whatever. Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. You know what I'm talking about. Where this society in the future, men just want to impregnate all these women, right? Men have been looking for ways to have sex and not have to take responsibility for children for years. And birth control and abortion were men's ideas. To some extent women, but mostly men. They're not things that came from women. Women have a natural inclination to be mothers. Like, it's a strong biological and spiritual hardwiring. Not all women, but it's there. Not all women can perceive it. The nesting and all the things that women do. Whereas men, it's more about the sexual activity and less about craving to be fathers, even though there is some of that in men, at least on a spiritual level, but not so much on a physical level, right? Like, men's urges are for reproduction, for planting the seed. And their compulsion is for that. Like, their, whatever your biological needs and the hardwiring for men. But women, it's about the, being a mom, right? It's a desire to be a mom. And there's this biological clock and these urges and things that take place that are something you can't even, they're beyond your control. And so men have wanted to have sex and not have the possibility of getting the woman pregnant. Like, that's a man thing. Women have it now because they've been told that that's what they want, but, deep down they don't want it, right? And because they're being used sexually, right? And they're not getting what their need is, which is to be a mom. And they're not getting the kind of relationship, a long-standing relationship that women crave and men are getting these, these quick one-night stands to relieve their sexual urges, and then they don't have to deal with all the other bullshit that they don't want to deal with, the relationship stuff, right? That's all based in men. The women don't want that. They've been told they want that, so they think they want it, right? And so all of this stuff is like you getting duped, and you're not realizing you're getting duped, right?
Right? Even if you take away contraception, like, women are really good at celibacy because you guys are actually a threat to us.
You're threatening celibacy? Like you're just this walking red flag. Like the what they think about themselves, these women in this video, like how, desirable they are, and how much of it's like what a gift they are. Like there's lots of women who are real gifts, would be a gift from God to a man, right? The good woman is a gift of God a gift from God to a man, right? A good woman, someone who's at least somewhat balanced, right? But these women are not.
You honestly can't make it up. Donald Trump is not going to have a national abortion ban. He's not going to stop IVF, and he's not going to limit access to contraception.
Yeah, because he doesn't care about any of those things. He didn't care about abortion in the first place because he's paid for women that he's had sex with to abort their babies. Donald Trump is an aborter. He's an abortion supporter. Like with women he was cheating on his wife, he paid for their abortions. And so why would he do that? But of course, this is the left TDS. Well, here's another thing here. So my wife sent me this.
Okay, so we're closing in on almost 5 p.m. Eastern time, and I've been tracking everything that's been going on across the country today. And my most important encounter was when I went out to get my champagne. I was talking to the guy in the store, of course, asking him, did he vote? And he said he did early.
Okay, so why? The guy who's selling you your champagne, you're wondering about his, what he did in terms of his voting?
Voting, and he asked me if I early voted. And he asked me, why I was getting the champagne. And I said, because I'm going to be toasting Madam President tonight. And he just looked at me with kind of like a smirk on his face. And I said, she's going to win this, right? And he said,
it is wonderful.
Oh, well, it's very, very close. And I said, no, it's not. He says, well, what do you mean? I said, no, it's not. The women of America are making their voices heard.
Apparently not the white women, according to that CNN reporter.
Reproductive rights is what it all comes down to.
Exactly, it comes down to that.
Women are voting in numbers relative to men that are unbelievable.
They're just voting. The women are every woman is so desperately wants to be able to kill their fetus. They're voting for this.
He's won this. And I said to him, she's going to take every one of the swing states plus Iowa. And he said, oh, but the numbers are so close. I said, I'm a political analyst. I'm telling you right now.
You're really good at your job. You're great at your frickin' job. I mean, what political analyst? I don't know who this person is. But if I'd like to see some follow-up video.
Numbers are there. She's taking this election. And then I said to him, you realize, and he didn't tell me who he voted for, but of course I knew.
I knew, because he's a man. He's a man. He's not going to get any either. That guy's, he might as well be celibate. He's going to be a monk right now. He'll never have sex again because women are just so good at being celibate. Now they're going to withhold.
And I said, you do realize you wasted your vote, right?
That fake laugh, right? That's almost a, Tucker Carlson, but like even worse. It's fake. And deep down, she must know. Like, I'd like to see her post. I'm going to look to see if I can find this person and see her post-election reaction.
And I didn't care. And I walked out with my bottle of champagne and happily walked home. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Turn the page. Oh, Gwen Walz. I got Gwen Walz and Tim Walz. Did I say that? Yes, they're coming up. So one last hurrah from her. Gwen Walz is a little depressed. I didn't see it yet, but I know she is. I saw the Tim Walz thing. I didn't know that she spoke first. And so there's that. Let me go see if I can find this political analyst. Okay, so on that same thread on Twitter, It's at Dr. Arlene Unfiltered. Election hangover. Somebody posted this like 5 posts down. So I just scrolled down. It was one of the more easy searches I had to do. Dr. Arlene is dealing with the reality now.
So, as you know, Kamala Harris did not win the election.
What did you do with your champagne, Dr. Arlene? You wonderful political analyst.
As the numbers stand right now, there were 18 million fewer votes than in
Where are all the women voting for their reproductive rights?
2020. And as I have said all along, you have to have a huge, huge turnout, and it goes to the Dems. And we didn't have it.
We didn't have that huge turnout.
And there's going to be a lot of speculating going on.
You know, there was some guy on CNN. I saw this on Fox, and he said that the Hispanic vote, GOP hasn't done as well as Trump since, in terms of percentages, since like 52 years ago. The black vote, 42 years ago, and some other demographic, I forget what it was, that is mostly Democratic demographic, that Trump did better amongst all these Democratic demographics, right? So it just wasn't the amount of turnout. Trump got a lot of votes. The turnout was people who didn't want to vote for Kamala but couldn't vote for Trump. And so she had a suppressed turnout, and or there was cheating in the last one, right? Like there was, those mail-in ballots were possibly not real, not legitimate. But either way, like everyone knew this was going to happen. She should have known if she was a political analyst and had insider information. If she is even a doctor, like what are you doctor of? Are you like a doctor like Jill Biden? Dr. Jill Biden is, like you have some PhD from some, some like non-existent online school or something. Some, not legitimate online school. Are you a doctor from something from Trump University? Did you get your doctorate from Trump University?
About everything that happened, everything that was wrong, every decision that was made, every aspect of this whole thing. And the reality is that Kamala Harris ran the most impressive campaign, mounting and running it and having only 3 months in which to do it.
Are you serious? Like, it's just, she sucked at, they did a good job. Not her. She didn't run it. They did a good job of stabbing Joe Biden in the back and replacing Kamala Harris and giving her a limited amount of time for the American people to realize how unlikable she was. That they did impeccably. The Democrats did. But it was doomed to failure. Like I said, they had 2 grenades. One was Joe Biden's senility. One was Kamala Harris's unlikability. And they set this up for you guys. And it was never going to be a winning ticket, right? Joe Biden was going to melt down mentally, which he already was in 2019. And Kamala Harris was going to continue to be unlikable. And her campaign was not run well. Like, she was all over the place, right? She tried to be this hope and freedom person and love American person. They tried to hijack Donald Trump talking points. They had these fake, they inflated their audience. They found ways to create this excitement that really wasn't there, and enthusiasm that wasn't there by bringing in people with celebrities and other, whatever it was, right? And these people that say that she ran a great campaign, stop. Like, she was never going to win. They were the polls were all along being manipulated to make it look like she was doing better than she was.
It's unprecedented, and it was absolutely magnificent. I've never seen anything like it in my entire life.
So it must mean that the voters and women don't know what the fuck they want. It must be that women suck so bad that they can't vote for the reproductive. Is it that women suck? Because you were saying that women were going to carry the day. But if Kamala Harris was this great candidate and she did a wonderful job of making her case, and that all these women would, of course, vote in droves to protect their reproductive rights, so they didn't show up, right? Is that what you're saying? Like, they didn't show up, they failed you, the voters did? So it's women. Like, women sucked on this one, right? Dr. Arlene, unfiltered.
Impressive on a level that, I mean, she has the campaign playbook. If you're going to win, that's the playbook that you use.
And then why didn't she win? She ran against a guy who was hard capped at 48%. 52% were never Trump voters. There's so many people that hate Trump that were going to vote for anybody because they hate Trump. And so she was running against a guy he's Trump. He's running against Trump. And so she did do that good a job, right? Because she got her ass kicked. Okay, so then YouTube recommended this to me this morning.
Political analyst claims Vice President Harris lost the election because the media wasn't on her side.
Maybe it's not so much Democrats' policies or messaging or the words that they use specifically, but there is an entire right-wing media ecosystem that doesn't exist on the left, and it does not exist in the center.
The fact that they're agreeing with that is silly. What do you mean a right-wing media ecosystem? I watch you guys all the time. I watch, I don't watch Fox. I watch CNN, MSNBC, and then some of these other whatever it is, right? Like some ABC News, occasionally CBS, whatever. In terms of their coverage, and it's completely biased. There's a liberal bias in the media. I mean, for them, like, just listen to that again. Like,
maybe it's not so much Democrats' policies or messaging or the words that they use specifically, but there is an entire right-wing media ecosystem that doesn't exist on the left, and it does not exist in the center or mainstream, and people are getting their information in very different ways now.
Okay, so she's talking about the internet, which it isn't right-wing because a lot of it's truther stuff. Some of it's right-wing. But you guys have access to the internet as well. And there's lots of liberals posting liberal shit like all those women that you just saw that, I just showed you with Hannity. There's lots of liberal women posting things. I mean, you don't think the liberals are on social media? You don't think the Democrats are on social media, right? I mean, they're supposed to be the party of the youth. And so, I mean, the media bias, if you're saying media bias, you're saying social media. And so you're now legitimizing social media. And the reason that the majority of people have taken to social media is because the mainstream media sucks, whether they're liberal or they're conservative. The majority of people have realized that you guys are full of shit. And that includes Fox News and every other right-wing station and certainly the left-wing stuff. And now they, as social media people, might be full of shit too. But if you guys were good at your job, there'd be no need for social media. I mean, news, at least it would be not the same level that it is now. It's because you guys suck. It's your fault, right? And I'm not just the media, but the politicians. You guys are just not even real. You're not authentic. And social media is at least authentic. At least the parts that people gravitate to, right? Okay, so I looked up Dr. Arlene Unfiltered. Dr. Arlene Unfiltered. This is her TikTok page. This account is private. Dr. Arlene, what happened? I thought you were unfiltered. Why are you filtering yourself? Dr. Arlene filters herself. Dr. Arlene Unfiltered on X. These posts are protected. Only approved followers can see Dr. Arlene's unfiltered posts. So she's put a filter on her TikTok page. She hasn't done it on her YouTube page. And, I want to say this. What this part of the video is about, and the whole theme of this video, is that people make things up based in their desires about other people or movements and delude themselves, which is a huge human problem, into believing things about other people that isn't true, based in personal prejudice and desires and wishful thinking. Obviously this is something that people know about. It's very prevalent now and very prevalent with Trump. Both sides have Trump derangement syndrome, as it's called, because they want to believe things about him, either because they, want to believe in the hope that Trump represents to them or the devil that Trump represents to the left. And so they make things up. And Trump himself helps because he says stupid shit and he promises things he can't deliver on, and he says inflammatory things that the liberals run wild with, And half the time he doesn't even know what he's doing, right? So I'm going to get into all that. And so, and all these other things I just showed you with the media, social media stuff, I want to talk about those in a voiceover. So Dr. Arlene said, part of how the election went off the rails, I'll show you a little bit about that, women are preparing to fight back. Why is Dr. Arlene still on the internet? She got 3,000 views here, 2,000 views here. She's got 10,000 subscribers. She got a small little channel. But this is what Dr. Arlene does professionally. I mean, it's there's not really much of an explanation here. She has a TikTok channel where I think she posts most of her stuff. And former professor of politics, political science, and has spent 40 years studying politics, government, and elections. But you absolutely suck at it. You absolutely suck at it. Because she came out and said that she knew Kamala Harris was going to win. When the real polling numbers and Kamala Harris's own behavior and Donald Trump's behavior suggested just the opposite. Kamala Harris was behaving desperately, and so were the Democrats in the final weeks of the election. And Trump was, like, he just, like, went on vacation, and he was just barely even trying. You could see that he had already been told he was going to win, right? I mean, numerous people noticed this. Blagojevich talked about it, that you can tell who's desperate because they get better polling numbers. And so Dr. Arlene, who spent 40 years studying political science and teaching political science and studying politics and all these things, went out and made this video about her buying fucking champagne. And she went viral, you know, in part because of her haircut. And that she was mocking the Trump voter that sold her the champagne, a working class guy. And she's got an attitude towards working class people. But that's how elections work. There's a lot more working class people than professorial type of people, right? And she had the, like, unmitigated failure of saying Kamala Harris ran a flawless campaign and that wasn't her fault. Like, that's her big thing. And she was basing her champagne buying on the fact that women were going to come out in droves because of their reproductive freedom, wanting to protect it. But 60% of Americans were pro-abortion and were against the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It was the only winning issue the Democrats had. But it wasn't the most important thing to Americans. The economy and immigration were more important to them, as were numerous other things, right? Reproductive freedoms aren't really all that important to lots of people. Everybody who's too old to get pregnant, right? Every woman who's too old to get pregnant, you know, it's not such a big thing to them. They might, you know, be passionate about it because they're feminist or something, but the majority of people, it's not their top issue. And lots of younger people, it's not their biggest issue, right? And so she based all of her champagne buying arrogant video that she produced, which again doesn't exist here. It would be right here, right? This is 21 hours ago, 1 day ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, right? How to handle your election anxiety. And there's the video that she posted where she guaranteed a win. She's scrubbed because she knows it makes her look good or look bad. She's lost all credibility as a person who can analyze politics because that was an epic fail. And so why are you talking? Like, you're now just someone who's being mocked on the internet for your failure, right? The TikTok video that was up there, you're being mocked for your failure because you failed epically. To understand this, right, on her channel, she was getting the most views she got was 3,000 views. And it may be people coming there to see, you know, what she's saying after she got embarrassed herself, right? I didn't look at the comments. You'll go back and look at the comments of the videos. I'm not going to do that now because I got other things to do here. But this video got 7 million views. And so it's got 8,000 retweets and 67,000 comments, right? And so this video is how she's going to be known. Like, the people who view her as a resource, you know, she has some credibility because being a teacher of political science, and the liberals like her and the Dems, and people who went to her, and she told them it was guaranteed that Kamala was going to win, and she made this video. now they don't trust her, and they're all feeling bad, and there's going to be anger and blame towards her, and everybody who's mocking her, 73 million people who've seen this, and maybe this, seen it. This is just this one, video here on X or Twitter, but in other places, could be many more. I mean, there could be stuff on TikTok. Or this video could be everywhere. Facebook. I mean, it could have so many millions of views, and all of them laughing at her failure. As her whole life doing this. This is what she does professionally. Doesn't look like she has much of a social life or a family or something, right? Looks like she has maybe a cat or two, right? Like something. I'm basing that on the haircut, and just her personality. But she doesn't. This is what she does. And she failed epically. Like, her failure is being documented all over the internet, right? She's a viral failure. And she's still talking about politics like she's, got something to say. Like, you've been outed as somebody who can't predict anything, right? And again, her personal bias, the idea that reproductive rights would be the deciding factor in the election, nobody thought that. And certainly Kamala Harris and their team didn't think that. I mean, they knew it was a winning issue, but it wasn't the issue that's going to carry her to the presidency. And she, made a big deal about it and was laughing and smirking about it and mocking some hard-working, retail liquor person, a liquor man, right? And so she was making fun of the liquor man, and then she got rolled up on the internet. Okay, so this is wonderful. We'll get back to Dr. Arlene. My wife just sent me this. One of Dr. Arlene's heroes here.
There's no point in saying good morning, because it certainly is not one.
Okay, so I've told you, I found out what this was, and then I guess it had something to do with the Speaker of the House, but it's weird. Why is she wearing red and Jill Biden wearing red? These people are all wearing red. Why would they wear red after Trump? I mean, it's a MAGA color. It's a Republican Party color. And she comes in wearing red, right? Red has all this symbology, ritualistically. I mean, the color red in terms of initiation, in terms of, Taylor Swift wore red after she was initiated in the Kanye West thing, right? In terms of, we know what red represents, like all kinds of different aspects, the color of blood, blood sacrifices, all this stuff. And, red and blue, it's the two houses of the Freemasonic organization, the Red House and the Blue House. And so that's where, the Crips and the Bloods and the Crips, all these different, groups that embrace these colors. And why in the world would you wear red after Trump trounced you? And why would Jill Biden wear it, right? And so when you are, in a sense, being blamed for taking Joe Biden out of the picture, because, of course you were going to be if Kamala Harris lost. And so this whole, there's more layers to this thing. Let's go back to Dr. Arlene. Part one, to how the election went off the rails.
It's because the Democratic Party didn't speak to the working class in a way that made them feel like that was the way they wanted to go. But what's very interesting is that...
Okay, so blaming the Democratic Party, kind of.
When people who are among the population that are considered working class...
Air quotes. Dr. Arlene dropping the air quotes.
When they were presented with Harris's economic plan, but were not told whose economic plan it was, that's what they preferred. But the second that it's associated with Kamala Harris, they don't want it. The second it's associated with the Democrats, they don't want it.
Okay, so blaming the voters is a problem, or the so-called working class, when they knew Kamala Harris wasn't likable, and they knew the Democratic Party had taken a beating, and lying about Joe Magoo's senility and his Parkinson's for 4 years, and people being like, this guy's senile as fuck, and having the media and everyone pretend he's not, and have Kamala Harris still lying about it, right, up until this day, And then the way that they axed Joe Biden and stuck Kamala Harris in, and the fact that Democrats didn't like her. Democrats didn't like her, right? Don't say she ran a flawless campaign when they picked a candidate that nobody fucking liked. And you expected that the campaign itself would make people like her? That wasn't going to happen. And so, of course, there's prejudice against her. People didn't like her. And they liked her less and less the more that she was out there in front of them. And so when you run an unlikable person who can't connect with other people and expect them to somehow change their position on her because, what, you got her to stop laughing? Like, it's silly. The Democratic Party failed. They ran a horrible candidate. And at a time when there's a huge disadvantage and a narrative, and they bypassed the democratic process to force Kamala Harris on the American people, and the American people want no part of it, right? I mean, they lost epically. Okay, I'm getting YouTubed here. This is some of my old videos. This is from 2 months ago, September. And so 3 videos I want to point out here. Yeah, Trumpers, Donald said, take the guns first and go through the due process second. He said this in a hearing where he was with a bunch of gun grabbers, Dianne Feinstein, and I followed it up. I found the clip I wanted. I'll show you this one here in a second. Kaboom, sad golems, Walz Harris interview fail, and Ketchupgate update, and more. And the more is, I coined the term ghoulgasm, which you'll hear in a second. Dianne Feinstein has one. And then the other one was a video. I couldn't find my video where I covered it, and I didn't put it in the title. But it's around that same period of time. Donald Trump on AFSID forfeiture. And this video later on shows you a young man who gets his, he's leaving Vegas with $30,000, and a cop steals the money. So AFSID forfeiture is about that. I'll show you a little clip from this as well. This is from 7 years ago. And these are things to know about Donald Trump. Like what we know about Donald Trump as a person who isn't very thorough in his research. He's not very thoughtful. And he's kind of like an asshole and a bonehead and arrogant. All very bad combinations. So let's start here. Okay, so this is the second video. I covered this hearing. This is a hearing after a big event in 2018 where Trump said, let's grab the guns first and go through due process second. And I'm going to show you that clip. But let me show you this part where watch how happy the ghoul is. It's got a couple of big giant cursors here. We'll go through this thing with Dianne Feinstein. Will come in and just abuse the local people, and they'll get, they'll start feeling themselves about the power they have, right? And Trump is in a much better position to take your guns because you trust him. I mean, and it's very hard for a Democrat to do it, but it's the same thing they did last time Trump was president. They pushed all this liberal agenda. And Trump is totally willing to go to martial law as well. If some events, and we know he'll play an actor with Ketchupgate, so that it's all set for Trump to grab your guns. So here's the Dianne Feinstein ghoulgasm.
That is more than we lost for brave troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so just doing something on this background check issue and using that as a base and then...
Nancy Klobuchar is talking here, and he's agreeing with her. Because Trump isn't thoughtful, and he doesn't know his own rhetoric, and he's disconnected from people. After he was shot, not the Ketchupgate, the bogus thing, he was talking about AR-15s. He goes, I think that's a powerful gun. My sons would know. You don't know anything about AR-15s, right? And so he went into this hearing thinking that this was a no-brainer to grab guns. And he had no idea that the Republican people had voted him in and the NRA and all these groups were going to oppose it. He had no idea. Like, he just was agreeing with everything they said because he's stupid, and he just does that. If people praise him, and they start to praise him here, and he wanted to show everyone he's going to do it better than any other president because that's his bullshit thing, but he doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't understand the Republican, what they believe in. I mean, he does it well enough to tell them what they want to hear, but in this meeting, you can tell he doesn't know the debate, right? And he's on the wrong side for his party. He's on the Democratic side, and Dianne Feinstein has this ghoulgasm,
I would like to add some of these other things we've talked about, I think would make a major difference.
So if you
not
could
just
add that to this bill, that would be great, Diane. If you could add what you have also, and I think you can, into the bill.
Yeah.
Show where you're ready.
Can you do that?
Look at how happy she gets, because she thinks they finally got a Republican president that's going to give in on this thing, because they've never had that. And she thinks so because he's just so, like, he's just arbitrary. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he just, like, he doesn't know the issue. He doesn't know. And then someone, of course, tells him, I mean, behind closed doors, because this thing disappeared. This is 2018, right? But, you know, of course, she's dead now, but she's having this ghoulgasm.
Joe?
That was the ghoulgasm that I spoke of, right? I found it. I was looking through, I was trying to find the Joe Man. So I showed the other clips of this video, and you can watch both videos if you're interested in seeing this, and you can watch the whole hearing. It's gun control meeting in 2018, I believe. 2017 or 18. And so the whole thing exists, like it's an hour long, and Trump's just agreeing with all the Democratic principles and saying what a great job he's going to do. And it shows you, like, he's completely compromisable, and he doesn't care about your issues. And he, you know, whatever the way the wind blows and whatever's better for him and his performance. And, you know, Trump is very easily manipulated just by praise and enthusiasm. But look at Dianne Feinstein. Look at how happy she was. And Trump's making her happy. And then he came back and said, yeah, I can't do that because somebody talked to him. But, you know, it shows you Trump is like, he has no dogma. He has no moral compass, right? He has no moral compass. This is the asset forfeiture. And he isn't, it says President Donald Trump does not appear to know what asset forfeiture is as he offers his advice. Now, asset forfeiture is where cops can just go grab your stuff without due process and steal your money. And ironically, when Trump was going through his legal issues, they went after asset forfeiture for him. You know, they're going to steal, like, you know, when some of these lawsuits went against him and some of these other things, right? But he just doesn't know what they're talking about, and he just agrees with it. You know, and he doesn't realize as president, he's got to first understand, he should have known before going into the meeting. So it's hilarious. It shows you how little experience he has as a politician and knowledge base.
Money from dope dealers.
So you're saying, okay, so you're saying the asset taking you used to do and it had an impact, right? And you're not allowed to do it now?
No, they have curtailed it a little bit. And I'm sure the folks are...
And that's for legal reasons or just political reasons?
They make it political and they make it, they make up stories.
So he doesn't know why people would be against this. He doesn't realize that, you know, I mean, there's a lot of bad cops out there. And there's a great movie about this on Netflix. Geez, I can't remember the name of it. But there's this guy's ex-military, an African-American guy. He's some kind of jiu-jitsu guy. And he's going to bail out his cousin in some Alabama prison. And he's riding his bike and he has like 30 grand on him. And the cops take it. And the cops are doing this because it's a place where the town is broke and the cops are just seizing money from people. And he gets into some kind of, you know, battle with the police department. But, you know, this asset forfeiture is a real problem, right? That we don't want. Like, as American citizens, you don't want this. Who gives a shit if they take drug dealers' money? It's going to be turned against you, like I said. All these things will be.
Well, I'd like to look into that, okay? There's no reason for that, okay?
Yeah, there is. Like, you don't know about it.
Do you think there's any reason for that? Are you aware of this?
I'm aware of that, Mr. President, and we have gotten a great deal of criticism for the asset forfeiture, which, as the sheriff said, is frequently was taking narcotics proceeds and other proceeds of crime, but there has been a lot of pressure on the department to curtail some of that.
So what do? So in other words, they have a huge stash of drugs. So in the old days, you take it. Now we're criticized if we take it. So who gets it? What happens to it?
Well, we have what is called equitable sharing, where we usually share it with the local police departments for whatever portion that they worked on the case. And it was a very successful program, very popular with the law enforcement community.
And now what happens?
Well, now we've just been given, there's been a lot of pressure not to forfeit in some cases.
Who would want that pressure, you know? I mean, other than like bad people, right? But who would want that pressure?
Again, not understanding the argument. The same argument against martial law. You might use it to apply it against bad people, in air quotes, but then it can be turned against you. It means that American citizens, cops can just go up and steal their shit, right? And we're heading towards that anyway, martial law and these kind of things, right? And you got to understand that Trump is, like, he's ignorant and he's rash and he's impulsive and he makes big proclamations. He says shit without knowing, you know, what the issue is.
You would think they'd want this stuff taken away. You have to be careful how you speak, I guess, but a lot of pressure's coming out of Congress, I don't know if that'll continue now or not. I think less so. I think Congress is going to get beat up really badly by the voters because they've let this happen. And I think badly. I think you'll be back in shape. So asset forfeiture, we're going to go back on, okay? Thank you, sir. I mean, how simple can anything be? You all agree with that, I assume, right? Absolutely. Do you even understand the other side of it? No. It's like some things...
Someone should tell them what it is, right?
Sort of like the Iran deal. Nobody even understands how a thing like that could have
Because
happened.
then he's associated with something like that. And it's nothing like the Iran deal. It's absolutely nothing like the fucking Iran deal. This is something completely different. But now in his mind, they're linked. And Trump is like, all right, we got to go with this, right?
Happened. It does nothing.
You're allowed to profit from the illegal proceeds, right?
Okay.
So if you're going to sell narcotics and sell illegal drugs in our country, you also cannot profit from that. And so we seize those profits.
So do we need any legislation or any executive orders for that, would you say, Dana? To put that back in?
He's just ready to sign his executive order over. He's just heard about it 5 minutes ago. He doesn't know the opposing argument. He's got just police there that are all for it. He doesn't have anybody there to tell him, no, this is what we're worried about. This is why there's an issue here. He doesn't understand why there would be any argument against it.
Business?
I don't think we need any executive orders. We just need kind of some encouragement to move in that direction.
Good. You're encouraged. I love that answer. That's better than signing executive orders and then these people take it and they make it look so terrible. Oh, it's so terrible. Would anybody like to make a statement? A couple of you?
Mr. President,
yes, sir.
on the asset forfeiture, we've got a state senator in Texas that was talking about introducing legislation to require conviction before we could receive that forfeiture money.
Can you believe that?
And I told
Can you believe that? That you know that you could steal people's stuff before they're convicted, before you know they're criminals.
him that the cartel would build a monument to him in Mexico if he could get that legislation.
Who's the state senator? Do you want to give his name? We'll destroy his career.
They're laughing about destroying some guy's career. Then it goes into this cop stealing money here from, in this case, Dove is giving Nugent the option to just abandon the money without going through the forfeiture process, which would also mean the car would be seized. And so this guy's driving with some cash, and it has nothing to do with drugs or anything. He's leaving Vegas, maybe he won money, whatever. And the cop just seizes his 30 grand, right? Without conviction. And Trump's willing to destroy someone's career over something he heard just 5 minutes ago he doesn't understand, and he doesn't understand the argument against. And so this is what you got to deal with this guy. I mean, all these people that he wants to fire because they criticize him or whatever, this is the danger of this guy, right? The legitimate danger that he can be worked, he's arbitrary, and he can be, you know, he can be used as a weapon for something that's going to happen later on. Even if he doesn't misuse it, which he could and will, you bring in martial law, you bring in asset forfeiture, you bring in these government overreach programs, and he's willing to do it with guns, he's willing to do it with martial law, he's willing to do it with asset forfeiture, and his base and people who know about these things and truthers know this is a bad thing. It's a government overreach. And it's bad for you, and it's going to lead to bad things, right? And so it's this is Donald Trump. This is what I'm talking about. So again, that's from 2018. So you have these two videos, were around the same time. when Trump was just, first year of president, first year and a half of presidency. And if you search asset forfeiture, it'll say that they're trying to take Donald Trump's stuff because of his, his battle with the DOJ over the documents thing and some of these lawsuits. So they were talking about him getting his assets stolen, right? And then all of a sudden he realizes, oh, wow, this is a bad thing. He didn't understand the other side of it. The other thing I was talking about, the 3 ways that he won he did better in these demographics that were usually Democratic. It was young people. So he did better with young people for like the past, 25 years. I mean, these different elections, whatever it was, 24 years. So he's had this like historic run with young people, black people, and Hispanics that were typically, that go towards the Democrats. And he didn't win those demographics, but he did better with them than, previous Republicans. And like that's interesting in its own way. Now, Trump understands big government, overreach, right? He talks about it often. He talks about it with, in terms of his, his real estate deals and having to deal with environmentalists. And he's about deregulation in small government. He understands that argument. And also he understands, or should understand, that whenever you pass anything as a president, you're handing that power, whenever you increase the power of the presidency, you're handing that power over to, like he just handed the power over to Joe Biden for 4 years and Joe Biden's team, right? So anytime there's a ruling, like the Supreme Court ruling that the president can do whatever he wants and not be prosecuted, well, that's something that every president's going to have from now on, good, bad, or evil. And so, he just can't apply those things when he thinks like, oh, law enforcement is good. Like he doesn't have any negative experiences with law enforcement. At least he didn't then in 2018. Maybe now he gets it a little bit more. But you understand this, like this is the kind of personality he has, where he's able to make rash decisions and threaten to destroy somebody over something he knows virtually nothing about, right? And this is, this which makes him, what makes people freak out about him. And going back to the martial law thing, there was these experts that came on, or this political consultant who was a Republican, and Wolf Blitzer asked him, does he have a problem with, what does he think about the military brass having private meetings about what to do about Trump if Trump starts breaking laws, right? And the guy said, well, he's a commander-in-chief, so why are they having secret meetings? Because this is what the Republican guy was saying, and that's fucked up too. So let me get back to this. I took a little break, ate lunch, and me and my wife and my dogs went for a little walk. This idea that Trump or Kamala Harris or somebody with no military background, and even if you had military background, it's one thing to be a soldier, and it's another thing to be like a general or somebody in the Joint Chiefs of Staff or something like this, right? To be a decision maker, right? Just because you work at McDonald's doesn't mean you could be the CEO of McDonald's. But these guys have never had any military experience at all, right? Donald Trump has, remember he was talking about, there's a great video out there where he says this, some guy with the last name Baghdadi died like a dog, right? There's a comedy bit out there by that one guy, whatever his name is, the guy who got fired from Saturday Night Live before he ever appeared on it. Don't care, don't tell me, don't need to know. But you can go watch the speech, and it's kind of an epic speech, and he's describing this, these robots going in and killing this guy, alleged terrorist, and Trump is blown away by watching it. He's sitting there watching this thing, and he doesn't belong in the room, but he's commander-in-chief, right? And the problem with Trump, because the same thing with Kamala and any of these people, Hillary, Obama, any of these people, they don't really have any military background, and other than Obama, who seemed to be a CIA asset, maybe they all are CIA assets, who knows? But if they're not, they don't know anything about the intelligence community either. And these long-standing institutions, governmental institutions, have these plans that take 50 years to execute, right? They've been working on things forever. And every time there's a president, they can come in and just say, that sounds stupid, let's get rid of that, right? And so that happens all the time, and it happens specifically with Trump. That's why the intelligence community and the political insiders tried to get rid of Trump because he was just so arbitrary. He's not very thoughtful. He's not a person that likes to know a lot about something. He's not somebody who wants to read these briefs and know everything that's going on. And he just wants enough to go out there and be able to talk about it at some rally. But he doesn't, go into it, and oftentimes he gets things wrong. And oftentimes he's emotional about it. And his big deciding factor is how it affects him and his legacy, or how the person who's in charge of it treats him. If the person's a Trump fan, then he's more likely to say, oh, that's good, keep on doing it, right? And so going back to my video from yesterday, when, Trump was going to go after fluoride, right? That video, my wife and I were talking about this because she watched my video. And somebody sent me a video, and they must have misunderstood what I was saying. But there was a guy in the Boston area. And I found it's ABC 5, whatever it was. It was a clip, like it was a news piece. And this Chinese fluoride was clogging up the pipes, like it wasn't dissolving into the system they had for delivering fluoride. And the guy's pouring it into the system, and you can see the skull and crossbones like on the bag as he pours this, this neurotoxin into the drinking water. It's like hilarious and crazy. And the video was everywhere. Like I saw it from other truthers. I mean, it was, back some years ago, 2010, something like that, right? And I found it. It's in one of my videos. I can look it up. In fact, I'll go do that after I'm done with this piece and see if I have it. Like, another problem is with the censorship. Like, say if you put fluoride in the title of your video and you're considered a truther, they might demonetize it or hide the video. So, you have to be very cautious with your titles. And so oftentimes I can't find things that were in my own videos because I've made so much content, I can't remember any of it. But, some years ago, I had this clip, and it seems to have disappeared from the internet. I'll go look again. I'll do a search on my videos. But unless I put the word fluoride in there, then, and unless I spelled it right, there's two issues. Like, I might have spelled it wrong. But if it's there and I can find it, I'll show it to you. Like right now, I'll go look for it. I found this fluoride video. Let me show you this here.
Fluoride in it, but Rob Damaris has been concerned for years.
See, it says sodium fluoride, dangerous, poison, toxic by ingestion. Targets bones, organs. This isn't what the video's about, right? Target organs. It says all the stuff. It's warnings right here. And they're not even covering this. They show this and they don't even ask about this.
Years about what's in the supply he gets from China.
It's made in China to boot, right? So it's a neurotoxin that they're adding to the water supply, and it has a big warning on it. It says all the organs that it can affect, and then it comes from China, which is in itself, it's very sketchy, right?
The residue you see here is what won't dissolve when he puts the fluoride powder in the water. What is that?
We don't know.
You have no idea what's in there.
I don't know what it is. It's not soluble. And it doesn't appear to be sodium fluoride, so we're not quite sure what it is.
Now, sodium fluoride is the active ingredient in rat poisons and various insect poisons. It's a byproduct from aluminum, like it comes from aluminum waste product they can't get rid of because it's a toxin. So it's a pain for them to get rid of it. So they decided to put it in the drinking water, right?
Damaris says the residue clogs his machines and makes it difficult to get a consistent mix.
This is the thing they called a Fluoride Pro. There is something called the Fluoride Pro out there that they use to put fluoride into all the drinking waters across the country.
Mix. For almost a year, these fluoride pumps in Amesbury have been off, and the water department says they'll stay off until they can figure out what's in the fluoride. The department.
All right. So in the fluoride that's causing it to not go into the system, right? And this guy has I'll show you the news report from him.
The Department of Public Health says more than 650,000 customers in 44 communities are getting the product in question, and only Amesbury has temporarily stopped using it. But despite those concerns, we want to be clear. Both state and federal health officials tell Team 5 Investigates Chinese fluoride is safe.
It's safe. It's Chinese.
The New York company which supplies the fluoride in question says it is certified by the National Sanitation Foundation, which assures the quality of the product. And despite 1,000 complaints, the Centers for Disease Control also says it's safe, although testing continues to determine the precise composition of the residue.
They should test it to make sure that what they're putting in is safe for us to drink.
Paul Stewart lives in Newburyport and believes he has a right to know exactly what's in his water.
It's right here. Let's go back to this thing at the beginning here. Here it is at the beginning of the video again. Danger, poison, toxic by ingestion. Targeted organs and these other things, right? Bone, central nervous system, gastrointestinal system, teeth. It's actually bad for your teeth, it's saying here, right? The targeted organs. And so, you know, they all saw this, right? They all saw this, this whatever it is, this warning. This woman's a reporter, and they're showing you this because it's coming from China, but the warning's for sodium fluoride. And let's say it had some medical benefit or some benefit for your teeth, like what they say it is, right? It's only going to be based in, for one, it needs to be applied directly to your teeth. It's not, it doesn't go into your teeth in terms of your, like through your body or whatever. So adding it to the water, it depends on how much you drink, how big you are. I mean, when you're doing dosages of any sort of medication, like I said, you just can't be random. And that's why they don't put shit in drinking water. Because some people are going to get too much of a dose, especially if it's freaking toxic. If too much of it's toxic, right? And, you know, they talked about putting like lithium in water, ways to calm the population down, right? Things like that, psychological drugs. But some people are going to get too much of it, and other people aren't going to get enough of it. And also people are going to have side effects to it, and they're not, you know, it's not being prescribed by a doctor. And what if a person is very sensitive to fluoride and has a stronger reaction than other people? That's going to be the case, right? And so the thing is just silly. You know, like, I mean, it's not even just silly, it's like evil. So here is its raticide, right? This is it kills rats. And the active ingredient here is sodium fluoride. Open image, a new tab. And so here it is, right? This is the back of it. It's got a warning here. It has sodium fluoride, it's the active ingredient. And they use this to kill rats. This was something they used in the old days as a rat poison. They probably got rid of it because it was affecting people. I mean, all these various poisons that were that were based in sodium fluoride. They're using to kill rats and other things here. And then also it was an insecticide, which I showed you before. These various places are putting it up there. Here it is as an insecticide, right? It was used to kill insects and rats. And what do they, when they're studying something for people, what do they test it on? Rats and mice, right? To see if something affects people in a negative way, they test it on mammals, and usually it's lab rats. And so they're testing on these lab rats. And so active ingredient, sodium fluoride, and then, the percentages, right? And so active ingredient, sodium fluoride, against all these things, and lice on poultry. So they're putting it on chickens to kill, chickens that you're going to either eat or you're going to lay eggs. They're putting it on chickens to kill the lice and, all those things. So this is the original report here that I found because it was at Amesbury, Mass. That was how I ended up finding the video. And this was Rob Damaris, who was the star of that video I just showed you. I don't know what it is. It's not soluble. It doesn't appear to be sodium fluoride, so you're not quite sure what it is. This is from WCVB 5 out of the Boston area. And so it's just so effed up, right? I'm going to put this on a video so I can save it for later if I ever have to use it again. But this is what we're talking about in terms of removing fluoride from the water. Why are they putting a neurotoxin in the water? It's just really bad. Okay, so I found the video. So, I was covering how RFK Jr. said that's one of the first things to go is sodium fluoride in the water. And then they're going to go after maybe the food supply, some of these other things, right? And so Trump might do that. Or he might not. He might have martial law, he might not. He might have both. He might do both. He might get fluoride out of the water and do martial law. Like, you don't know what Trump's going to do. Because Trump doesn't know what he's going to do, right? He changes his mind, and he backs one thing and then backs something else. And, he says something. He flirted with the truth community years ago. And, in 2016, he had gone after Obama birth certificate, once. And, he pretended to be one of these people that was interested in these things, and maybe he has some interest in them. You know, he had Steve Bannon around, and he was pushing him to embrace Alex Jones and the right-wing truthers. And then as soon as he got elected, he forgot all about the truth community. I mean, he does things like that. He says things, he promises things, he implies things. And there's people who still think he's a truther because everybody has their own, you know, when you have relationships with people, like I said earlier, you want to see what you want to see, right? And, you know, people have dated or married, in my case, married somebody who has an extreme problem with this, right? So my ex had two kinds of people. People who are like a hero or a rescuer, or somebody who was like a villain or abuser, right? Someone she claimed to be severely abused by her mom and dad, and at least there's some, I know that to be at least partially true, if not all the way true. And she identified as a victim. And she was, in terms of her victimization, she had something or someone that was persecuting her. And when I met her, in her case, the time I met her, it was her husband. And she did a good job of playing the damsel in distress. And you'll find this with women particularly who are able to feed into the programming you've had from watching like fucking Disney movies or whatever when you grew up. And, you know, men have this narrative that you're going to rescue the woman, right? Like some kind of hero, the hero narrative. And women have the same thing, that they're going to rescue a man, oftentimes from himself, right? But, you know, women have the same narrative, right? You watch these movies, women who rescue a man who's, you know, lost, and, you know, they give him purpose, and they, you know, and that can happen, you know, it does happen occasionally. And men who are rescuing a woman from an abusive situation, like some princess who's been kidnapped by a villain. You know, it's in the Ramayana, all the way back in ancient India, where Rama's wife gets kidnapped by Ravana, right? And so there's a whole war. The whole Ramayana is about that. And so women who are able to click into this archetype, and my ex was someone who was able to do that, and then be in distress, they can use that. Like, men just naturally fall into this trap. And she was able to do that. In the beginning of our time together, I had the hero narrative, and I was not great. Like, I was stressed out. My ex was older than me, so I was not psyched about that and the circumstances, and like she was going through a divorce and like all these things. And like, I just wasn't ready for marriage, so I was not great back then. But she viewed me as the hero. And then later on, when I was much better as a husband and a man, and I had matured, I'd gone through some spiritual cleaning, and I had, you know, I was much more loving and a better, you know, husband, she gave me the villain narrative. Like, it's just, these were the two things that she had. And then she was telling people they had to rescue her from me, right? I'm sure that's how she nabbed her last guy. You know, like, so, you know, but she viewed herself always as a victim. And whatever way she warped you as a person, especially the men that were in her life, she wasn't viewing you as a real person. She was viewing you as what she needed. And there's so many people, everyone does that a little bit. Some people are doing a lot more. But people are doing it with Trump specifically. All the people that they think Trump is a savior, and he's clearly not that. You know, this is TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. And then all the people thinking Trump is the devil, and he's clearly not that either, right? And they make things up about him, and then they make things up about what he's going to do. And they only hear the part that they want to hear, right? When Trump says something they agree with, they're like, yay, you know, and then he says something they don't agree with, they just can't hear it, or they rationalize it in some way. The same thing with the people on the left. When Trump does something good, I mean, the guy can't do anything good. And he's always going to do the worst thing, and they're just going to bring in their imaginations, and the media is going to make things up about him. But Trump just goes on these rambling rants and rallies, and sometimes he talks about shit he doesn't even know. Most of it he doesn't remember. And he talks about things and says things that he has no chance of doing or really doesn't want to do, or he implies he's going to do things. And his words can be twisted either way, right? And so nobody really knows what he's going to do, because he doesn't have a firm belief system. He doesn't have a group or a demographic he identifies with, other than really rich businessmen. and he's not going to talk about that shit, right? Because that's, you don't talk about helping out your business people and those, being a wealthy person. He's trying to make himself like everyone else. And so going into this presidency, and we've seen this before with him, you don't know what he's going to do, right? And it's more than likely, though, he sides with power because, he had a relationship with RFK Jr. before, and RFK Jr. said Trump was going to do a lot of the things RFK Jr. said, and he believed a lot of the things that RFK Jr. was saying, particularly about vaccines. And then Pfizer gave him $1 million, and he dropped RFK Jr. And so if he can leverage it for money or power, he will. And so whether he does this fluoride thing or the food thing, we'll see. And whether he does the martial law thing, there's another thing there. Was he just talking shit, or was he actually going to try to do this? And so, with all that, he gets triggered and he reacts to people. And now that he has more power, the difference between Trump now and 2016, when Trump did the Joe Rogan interview, he said the biggest mistake he made was hiring people who were Washington insiders or leaving people in office and not bringing in his own people who didn't know what the fuck they were doing because, they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, and he didn't know it. He admits he didn't know what he was doing. Like, he had run companies, but he wasn't a politician. And now he has a whole host of people, Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these people who are, his people. They're Trumpers. And now he has Trumpers and the allies in the Senate and the House. He's got Trump-appointed Supreme Court justices, and he has more of a sense of the thing because he's already done it, and he can appoint people to these positions. If he wants to clean house for the whole government and appoint all Trump people, that's fucking dangerous because there's no checks and balances. I mean, it's just going to be a shit show. Like, it'll be interesting to watch, but it can't end well because Trump, has this belief that he's a winner and he's not. Like, he won the election epically, which is great, but he's failed in business and he's failed over and over again in his endeavors. And he's not somebody who sees things clearly, and he's very impulsive and reacts in a very, he has a warped lens, and he doesn't look for feedback and look for the, experts or whatever it is. He thinks he knows more than everybody else. And so, you'll start seeing things, and of course the Democrats are going to go nuts and say the sky's falling, but the Trump supporters will deny all of it and pretend that he's, they'll just make it up and rearrange everything. Even the Trump truthers, people who are in the truth community, who with all the evidence at their disposal wouldn't see through the whole the whole bandage, the whole ketchup gate, the whole bandage gate, right? The fake shooting. It was clearly fake. And Trump was playing everybody. It was totally a WWE. And they won't even question it. And so, like, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be kind of interesting. I'm looking forward to it a little bit more than I thought I would. Because, But again, if there's martial law, then, like, you can't unfuck that, right? I mean, America will be so fucked if he does that. And then you'll see it play out. Anyways, let me go on to the other stuff here. Okay, here we go. Today is Sunday, November 10th. I just got to finish up this video. This video won't be up till Tuesday. I just released a video today. I'm kind of ahead of time. I'm just going to finish this up, and I'll take today off, and I'll do whatever. So I got this message on my, sometimes my phone gets a Twitter recommendation, and it was this. I'm very surprised the Democrats who fought a hard and valiant fight in 2020 presidential election, raising a record amount of money, didn't have a lot of money left over. Now they are being squeezed by vendors and others. They're not being squeezed. They owe money, right? You think that people... See, this is Trump, and I'm going to talk about this. This is an aspect of Trump, the elitist version of Trump. The vendors aren't squeezing them. These are hardworking people that expect to be paid, right? Because they delivered services and, they delivered whatever it was, right, that they gave to the campaign, whatever the campaign was paying for, the campaign owes them money. And Donald Trump thinks they're being squeezed, right? Because he didn't pay vendors when he was, when he ran his companies and things, and they'd renegotiate and pay them less money or screw them all together. And this is the kind of guy Trump was. Let me read the rest of this. being squeezed by vendors and others. Whatever we can do to help them during this difficult period, I would strongly recommend we as a party, and for the sake of the desperately needed unity, do. We have a lot of money left over in that our biggest asset in the campaign was earned media, and that doesn't cost very much. Make America great again. Why should you pay off the Democrats' debt? Is he freaking serious about this? It's hard to say. Is he trolling them? I don't understand why he would even suggest such a thing. The Democrats are never going to like him. They're never going to... I mean, even if they did, it's in their best interest to sabotage. That's what he did to them. That's what they've been doing to each other for years. They're never going to cooperate with him. His failure is their success, right? And they hate the guy. And paying off their whatever debt that Kamala Harris left them in, it's something like $20 million, is the wrong thing to do, right? Because the DNC should start out in the hole because all these things that they did, right? All the bullshit that they, this whole non-democratic thing that they just did. I'll show you a little clip in a second here about Nancy Pelosi before we get to Tim Walz and his speech, because that's the cherry on the top of the cake of this video. And his wife speaks, which I didn't realize at first. And so that's going to be great. But before I get to that, let's finish up this election stuff and post-election stuff and the blame game and all that. And so first of all, Trump was never in it for other people. See, all these Trumpers who believe that Trump is a rich man who no longer is thinking about himself. He's becoming altruistic. And he's just doing all this for everybody in America. He just wants to save America because he loves it so much. Like, you're full of shit. Like, why would you think that's not how people who are rich, they don't get real rich and then become spiritual and become selfless. They don't live a lifetime of being selfish and then at the end of their life go, I'm going to be selfless. It's not anything that ever happens to rich people. I mean, think about history, kings and these people. There's Siddhartha the Buddha, the original Buddha for the Buddhist religion. And he was an Indian prince. And he lived a sheltered life, a great life as a prince. And they didn't let him out of the castle. So he had no idea how the people were suffering. And he went out there to the streets. He saw dead bodies. He saw criminal behavior. He saw, the dirt and the filth of the city. And he was stunned. And he left and renounced his princehood and went out to meditate because he wanted to relieve people's suffering, right? Which is a noble thing, but the religion hasn't, it isn't about spirituality. They don't believe in God. There's a whole thing there, right? Because, it's more about relieving suffering than it is about the rest of these things. But once in a while you have a rich person who realizes, oftentimes they realize that they're not happy with all that they have. And some people walk away from it. And pretty much all of them realize they're not happy, and almost nobody walks away from it. Nobody walks away from power. Nobody walks away from, not nobody, almost nobody. The occasional great person does. And then they become a spiritual person. But Trump isn't that person, right? He's never been that person. You can see by what he says. And him saying the vendors are squeezing Kamala Harris, that's what an elitist, a person who's in it for the elite people, is going to take care of the elite people. His handlers, the Wall Street and Israel and, the banks and these are the, the people that are supporting Trump. These are his handlers. These are the people that Trump resonates with, right? So Trump wasn't a selfish prick. He had this thing called the art of the deal, which is about screwing other people and getting a better deal for yourself. In fact, when he said he was going to have Mexico, he's going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. Why the fuck would Mexico pay for it? When you're building a fence, like when when we're doing farming and you're building a fence to keep your cows in, there's certain places, rural places, where your neighbor has to split and pay for half of the fence. And it depends on whether you want to do that. Most people don't, make their neighbor pay for their fencing, but, sometimes there's some kind of agreement there because your fence is also your neighbor's fence, right? It helps your neighbor. And so, this is kind of just, farming etiquette and things like that. But a wall between America and Mexico isn't going to help Mexico. They don't want a wall, right? And why would they pay for it? What about the Mexican people? But Trump talked about things like that all the time because he loved to talk about how he negotiated great deals where the other person got a shitty deal and Trump got a good deal, right? And that's the kind of selfish person he is. He's not in it for other people. He's not in it for you. He's not in it for America. He's in it for Trump. He's always been about Trump. He's very narcissistic. He wants his name everywhere, his buildings. And he didn't stop being narcissistic and self-centered and then just say, oh, I'm gonna make I'm gonna make America great again because I love America so much. He's never been that guy. People like that are always the way they are. And you can see that he hasn't changed by everything that he says, right? And so going into the reason why these guys lost, let me go to the Nancy Pelosi video here first, and we'll get into that. Also, just let me add this here, I'm editing. And, this is what I'm talking about, unpredictable. And you don't know whether Trump's trolling them or he actually means it, that he wants to pay off the Democrats' debt. Like, it's just a weird thing to do, right? Nobody would have thought that would happen. Like, who would have thought, that Trump would tweet out that he wanted to pay off the Democrats' debt, right? And they talk about what a great campaign they ran in 2020. It's just classic Trump, right? It's just like totally random.
Top Democrats still trying to process Vice President Harris' stunning loss. The former Speaker Nancy Pelosi placing the blame on President Biden and his late exit from the race. Pelosi telling the New York Times, quote, had the president gotten out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. Our next guest has recently been vocal about
See, all these people, they share some kind of... this is how the world works now. The blame game is amazing. And I'll get into why they really lost. Whether... it could just be totally rigged. Like, it's all rigged to one... It's a fixed game. And so there's that part of it. And the powers that be... Trump has been their best asset. So I don't know a scenario where the Democrats would have won this, right? But in terms of, all these various, blame game type of scenarios, it's amazing how the internet does these things, right? There's a great movie called Vengeance. My wife and I saw it. I saw it about a month ago. And I watched it with her. It's, more enjoyable watching with her because she really laughs and, it's just better. But it was still, it was a great movie when I watched it by myself. And I had forgot a little bit about it. And it's this guy, B.J. Novak from The Office, who I always found, I didn't like the guy. And Ashton Kutcher's in it, another person I don't really like. But the movie was brilliant. It was maybe what I would consider the best movie I saw. I'm not sure when it was made, last year, whatever it was. But, the guy owns his liberal, obnoxious, city-dwelling, millennial, yuppie kind of crap, right? Right in the beginning. And it's him going to Texas and dealing with the divide between the left and the right and the liberals and, people live in the city, the city and rural people, all these things, right? It's, it's really, it's a kind of a lot of great comic moments, but it's just a wonderful movie. And it deals with some of this kind of stuff that I'm talking about here, right? This idea that everything in the media is just dissected. And there's a great ending scene that talks about, the blog, the podcast culture and all that stuff. And people all have to have their opinion and everyone's opinion matters and none of them really matter. And who gives a shit? You lost, right? Finger pointing is the worst thing that you can do. But they're all doing it. So much so, here's this.
Missteps made in the Harris campaign. It's DNC Woman's Chair and Harris surrogate Lindy Lee joining us now. Lindy.
So she's coming on Fox News. I believe this might be Sunday morning. It's either Saturday or Sunday. I don't know when they taped this. But this woman's a Democrat going on Fox News to shit on people, right? Clearly she's not. She's there for Kamala. So she's Kamala's spokesperson. And Nancy Pelosi just said Kamala was not the best candidate. There should have been a primary to determine who is the best one, which of course there should have been. That's how you pick the one that Democrats are most enthusiastic about, right? Or the Republicans. If you don't have a primary and you just pick candidates then you don't know what the American people even like the person. Certainly didn't like Kamala. She never won an election, right? Like anything of, that wasn't rigged in her favor completely.
Appreciate you being here. This is sort of an after analysis here of what happened with the campaign.
I just want to say this. I talked about this with this guy, Dodgy, the Gratefullness guy. And, you could see it with him. And also there's celebrities who become truthers. Roseanne Barr and some of these other people. Or pseudo-celebrities, Hollywood people, maybe C or B level celebrities, right? And they're given an audience without earning it, just because of who they are. Dodgy inherited an audience, but they didn't win an audience on social media. And all of us who've won an audience by the quality of our content, whatever size audience that is, you have to go through things and change and adapt. And like I had to become a better communicator. Like I had to work on the way I speak, right? I had to, listen to how I was speaking like I was somebody else hearing me for the first time. And I'm like, oh, I got to do better than that, right? Like you have to, through some sort of either coaching or self-assessment, you have to change the way that you do things, and you have to develop a skill. I already had some of these skills, but then you have to hone those skills, right? And you have to win an audience. You have to win support. And Kamala Harris never did that, right? She had support by, dating a 60-year-old guy in power, but she didn't win support of the people. And she was put out there as somebody who, when you have a machine behind you, she's always had a machine behind her, pushing people towards her. Like she's selected, and then the people, all right, well, I guess we have to go with her because they've chosen her for us. But a primary is where people choose for themselves. And the Democrats never did that, right?
But first, talk to me about what's going on. You see here Nancy Pelosi making the case to sort of blame Joe Biden, but it's a backhanded compliment because she's blaming Joe Biden for allowing Kamala Harris to be the nominee.
Right. Well, thank you so much for having me. And what's left unsaid is that she is not forcefully saying that Harris would have been the strongest candidate after a rigorous process. She's not saying definitively that it would have been her. She says it might have been her, but, maybe there was an alternative. Maybe it was Josh Shapiro or maybe Gretchen Whitmer, someone who can forcefully litigate the case.
It wasn't Genocide Josh because his nickname was Genocide Josh. And that was part of the reason they lost.
Against Donald Trump. And if you truly believe that Trump is an existential threat, and that's what Democrats have been saying for the past couple of years, then you should have had that process instead of just coronating somebody.
What is the relationship?
She's a Kamala Harris surrogate. She just kind of shit on Kamala.
What has been the relationship throughout the campaign, and what do you think the relationship is today between Biden world and Kamala Harris world?
Well, I have friends, in both worlds, and let me tell you, the relationship was terrible even before the campaign. There was backstabbing. They wanted to hand her the most, least favorable agenda.
Kaboom! This is delivering here. I didn't watch this yet. This part, she's really going in. Like she's coming in, and she's just, now it comes out, right? Like, of course she didn't like her, and she didn't like him.
The legislative priorities, she was stuck with immigration, civil rights, like none of that went
Before she
anywhere.
was even a candidate,
exactly.
you're saying,
And
as vice president.
There was a lot of backstabbing we saw in the press. People were leaking stuff all the time. The White House was leaking like a sieve when it came to Kamala Harris. And finally, in the final year, she was able to stabilize and stop the bleeding of her staff because there was a lot of turnover as well. And we saw the press reports about that. And things have finally started to calm down. And I actually think President Biden, the whole endorsing her 30 minutes after he dropped out, I think that was a big FU to the party. You don't want me, here's somebody that you may not.
She's going in. It is great.
Not like, but deal with it,
It's like there's a big FU to the party. She's supposed to be a Kamala surrogate, and she's crapping all over both of them. Like he's saying it's a big FU to the party, now you got Kamala. You're stuck with Kamala. You don't want me? Okay. Like Joe Biden was so bitter because Trump didn't stab him in the back. Republicans didn't stab him in the back. So he did, all this stuff he said about fighting for the soul of America, that's bullshit, right? Because it came down to it, he sabotaged his own party. And he was happy when Trump won. You could see the smile on his face. I covered that in my last video, right? Like this is how petty and just evil and self-centered they are. Like there's nothing here, right? Like there's just, Like the whole thing is, just an absolute mess, right? It's just people want to believe, see what they want to see. And then people fell in love with Kamala, like some of the hardcore Democrats, because of their hatred of Trump, and they bought into all that bullshit. It was all manufactured and staged, and there's no real, democratic process there. And what I saw, there was, when I ate breakfast this morning, I flipped through the channels, and I think it was CNN, and they had a Democratic senator or state representative or something from Pennsylvania. And he was talking about how over the years they have been losing, they've been bleeding white class, laborers, right? Like white class, whatever they call those guys, workers, the working class. And now they're bleeding black and Hispanic working class people, right? And, more than anything else, I bet it has to do with the gender stuff, right? Like that just rubbed people the wrong way that were, it's just a huge ask for people to redefine how they view sexual relationships, sexuality, marriage, and all the stuff that goes with it in terms of, gender and all that stuff, right? Like it's pushing a morality on people that don't agree with it at all. A lot of these people are Christian, and it goes against everything that they believe. And the Democratic Party, that's more than anything else, they push that, and no one's thinking that came from the Republicans, right? That's 100% on the Democrats. And there are some other things there, too, the suffering financially. But the Democrats, because of that agenda, are completely out of touch. And then, of course, Trump ran those ads about her wanting, her making the government in California pay for transition surgeries for prisoners, right? And these, middle-class people, they don't want to pay for that, right? They didn't want to pay for the Ukrainian war, and they was just viewed like the Democrats are out of touch. And so they had no chance of winning because the whole Democratic Party got saddled with that, and they weren't going to back away from that position because then they lose the endorsement of the LGBTQ, and they can't walk away from that. So, it's, kind of a bad situation for the Democrats because they're no longer the populist party, and Trump told these people what they wanted to hear, right? There's one more little bit here.
Suggesting that he's sticking the party with Kamala
Kind of
Harris.
like sticking it to the man.
Yeah, but help me understand your perspective on that because you worked for Kamala Harris.
I didn't. I'm a donor.
You're a donor.
Technically, I'm not on anyone's payroll. I'm not beholden to anyone. That's why I'm here telling the truth. I'm not here to gaslight anybody. This is just the truth.
And what is the truth?
The truth is this is just an epic disaster. This is a $1 billion disaster. Actually, it was $1.018 billion, I think, right? There were $20 million or $18 million in debt.
Right.
It's incredible. And I raised millions of that. I have friends that I have to be accountable to and to explain what happened because I told them it was a margin of error race. I was promised, Jen O'Malley Dillon promised all of us that Harris would win. She even put videos out saying that Harris would win. I believed her. My donors believed her. And so they wrote massive checks. I feel like a lot of us were misled. And even on the night of election night, Will, I looked somebody in the eye and I said, are we going to do this? Are we going to pull it off? She told me yes. And I asked somebody else, how are you feeling? He's like, we're going to win Iowa. And I was like, what?
Do you think did they believe this going in? Was there a real sense of false confidence on the side of Kamala Harris? Or did they know they were in store for disaster?
I was wondering about that. I was like, I asked them, are you privy to internal numbers that I am not seeing? Because I study this so carefully, and I just wasn't seeing any basis for that level of confidence.
This is great. So, this is wonderful.
And I also want to remind our viewers that, the Trump campaign was touting all these incredible empirical data weeks before election night. What Harris is touting was the door knocking. She didn't say anything really about early voting. Now I know it's because there was nothing much to say.
Kaboom. So this is kind of great. This is and again, vultures have a bad rap. Like any of these animals that clean up the bacteria fest, they eat the dead, right? Vultures, opossums, crows, they do a service because there's these, these creatures just laying there. They need to be processed. They're not getting burials, right? The microbes, And so, people have a disdain for animals that eat carrion, but it's a noble, important job. But, the vultures are circling, right? Like they're not circling, they've descended and they're picking the carcass here. Like, it's bad. So there's that. Let's go to the Tim Walz thing. Okay, so they were covering this, I guess, here on YouTube. And they were 30 minutes of just music. There might have been some other... No, it was just 30 minutes of music. People are waiting for the Walzes to come out in Minnesota and talk about the election. So here she is, the superstar. She was by far the best person involved in the election. And, they didn't give her enough run. Boom, look at her come in. Yeah, she's a little bit sad. Poor Gwen. There's nothing worse than seeing a crazy person sad. Boom. Come on, turn the page, Glenn. Turn the page. Glenn, turn the page. Gwen. I guess he wishes it was Glenn. When he proposed to her, he thought her name was Glenn. Boom.
Well, good afternoon, Minnesota.
Boom. Yeah, there you go. Fix the camera.
There is just no place like home. And
yeah, I thought you were shitting on it earlier when you were in Atlanta talking about how it's snowing up there. And so you're happy when you passed out ginger snaps and you talked about how they were having snow up there and the godforsaken, winters they have there.
I'm so proud to be here with all of you, friends, family, and our partners for progress.
Woo!
Yep.
Yep. Don't cry, Gwen. It's okay. You get to turn the page next time.
Right here in this state that we love.
Turn the page.
Tim and I could not be more grateful for the support you've offered us. Not only these last few months, but for nearly 2 decades.
Get your camera straight. Come on. Get your camera right there. There you go, Rosa. There you go. You missed out.
So from our family to yours, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Turn the page, Gwen. Turn that fucking page, Gwen. Turn the page.
And let me say, Kamala Harris is a remarkable leader.
Woo! Yeah, how? When did she ever lead in her life? I mean, she was given this opportunity 3 months ago, and she failed epically, and they are in debt.
And she would have been a remarkable president.
Now she's got to go work at Jiffy Lube. Do you need lawyers at Jiffy Lube? She'll do some lawyerly shit now.
I am so thankful that on this journey, we had the privilege to get to know her and Doug.
Doggy.
And their wonderful family. We are forever grateful. So I understand how we're all feeling today.
I do understand.
And trust me.
Because you're feeling that way, right, Gwen? Not because you understand it. How we all are feeling? I'm feeling pretty fucking good, Gwen. I don't know, the rest of the country is feeling pretty good, too. The majority of people are feeling pretty good. Just these people in the room, yeah, you're feeling bad, but you should be feeling that way, too.
I've taken on many a battle and fallen short many a time.
What battles did you take on, Gwen? Battle with some kid in your high school or the school board or what? What kind of battles have you taken on and fallen short? Trying to convert your husband over to being heterosexual?
And losing stings.
I thought you were going to say sucks, Glenn. That would have been better. It stings.
And it's okay to feel sad.
It's okay. Thanks, Gwen. Talk to us like we're in kindergarten. It's okay to feel sad.
And scared.
Scared.
And a little surprised.
Surprised.
If I'm being honest.
I was told like we were going to win for sure. Mm-hmm. I told we were going to turn that fucking page, and now I'm like, what? We were never going to turn that page.
To give yourself the grace to grieve what could have been.
Yeah, we know what it could have been. It would be the same thing that we're going to get, just a different, the different party. It's the same crap we would have got that we're getting with Trump, and I would have got with Kamala.
But moments like this ask us to reflect on what matters most, to reflect on what it is that we are fighting for.
What is that, Gwen?
And I can't help but think back to when Tim and I first met.
Oh, where did you move? It's that classroom in the Indian Reservation, Nebraska? Is that place?
We were teachers in a school, just
Just like this.
like this one.
Like this one that I'm in.
And we built our relationship on a shared belief that every single student mattered.
They mattered. They all mattered. Like, you know, there were lots of teachers like, that kid over there, he don't fucking matter. But we were like, every student matters.
Everyone deserved a shot to succeed.
Exactly. I mean, most teachers are like, fuck those guys over there. They're built for failure. I'm going to make sure they fail because, you know, it's my responsibility to pick winners and losers. Not me and Tim. Every kid that we had, we thought they deserve an education because it's our job to, you know, like fucking teach them. Woo! We never asked them if they were Democrats or Republicans.
Now, as an English teacher, I choose my words carefully. So when we say everyone, we mean everyone, every single one.
We don't mean like just the sum of the everyone. I mean, when I say everyone, I mean the actual everyone.
And this belief has been the driving force of Tim's public service and mine too.
We're public servants. We're just servants to the public. We're just these kind of people. We're not in for ourselves at all.
We've all worked so hard to build a Minnesota that all of us can call home, where everyone can live with safety and dignity and opportunity and, yes, freedom.
Freedom. That's the thing that cost you the election, right? But not men, though, because like when there's that list of different demographics and groups that the Karras campaign was there for, they left men. They put women number one, and they left men off altogether, right? And so.
So now, more than ever, that important work continues. Because we have a responsibility.
You're kind of gloomy today, Gwen.
To keep this haven, this special place, Minnesota, safe and inclusive.
I mean, the least safe person. Remember the riots? I mean, what are you talking about? Like the whole stuff that happened around that whole thing that happened with the Black Lives Matter. I can't remember the guy's name for some reason, but you know what it is, right? That was, you know, Minnesota was in tatters, right? Remember the riots? Remember all that stuff? And he encouraged that shit, right? That was not a safe place then.
And strong. Because our neighbors, they are counting on us. So let's take everything we're feeling, our fear, our fatigue, our frustration, and let us use it as our fuel.
Fuel. It'll be fuel for us. Woo!
Yes, we have got to dig in, and not only dig in, we have got to dig deep.
Got to dig deep. We got to dig big giant holes and bury the Republicans in them.
We have to be steadfast and stubborn, and it is going to take all of us.
All of us. We all need to get your shovels out, and we're going to, instead of turning the page, we're going to dig holes. We got to dig holes right now.
That's right. But we cannot, and we will not give up this fight.
Woo! Woo!
I'm not sure if you heard me. We cannot and we will not give up this fight.
Yeah, we heard you the first time. Boom. There you go. Clap, Gwen. With your turn the pages. Oh, look at this.
Steadfast and stubborn. And it is going to take all of us.
All of us.
That's right.
That's right.
But we cannot and we will not give up this fight.
What did you say? I didn't hear you. What did you say? Gwen, can you repeat that? I didn't hear you. What did you say?
I'm not sure if you heard me.
I didn't.
We cannot and we will not give up this fight.
Oh, thanks. Boom. Look at them. Look at those clappers. Look at those turn the pages. Come on. Raise the roof, Gwen. Come on.
That's right. We cannot and we will not give up this fight.
Remember in The Office when the Dwight character was giving a speech and Jim handed us like some kind of techniques that were done by Mussolini. And he gave a speech and it rocked. That's Gwen Walz. She's doing her Mussolini.
That's right. All right, you can sit down now. So as we head straight into late fall and a Minnesota winter,
Which we know how bad that is and how depressing that shit is.
I feel seeds of hope.
Hope is everywhere. That's my daughter. She's leaving her seeds all over the house.
Now, they may be buried deep, deep down, but I know they are there.
Just got to turn the page.
Because of all of you, they are there.
You got to dig some holes and turn some pages.
And because we are in this together,
Together.
they are there. There is a verse from 2 Timothy that's been on my mind this week. And Tim and I have also often shared it with each other. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. And I have kept the faith. Minnesota, we have kept the faith.
Kaboom. Quoting the Bible. And then pushing a liberal agenda that's clearly not in the Bible.
But here's the thing.
What's the thing, Gwen? Tell us.
And Kamala said this. Sometimes that fight takes longer than we thought.
So we thought it did. We thought it wasn't going to. We thought we were going to turn the page, but now we just got to pretend we're going to, turn the page in the future.
And sometimes there are roadblocks and boulders and fences without gates.
Fences without gates.
In that race. But we have no choice but to keep the faith. And we have no choice but to fight on, right?
Wrong. Right.
That's right. And we
Right.
will. So you know what Tim says.
Honey, can you put on the Brad Pitt mask again?
We'll sleep when we're dead.
We'll sleep when we're done. That's how it kind of works.
As some of you know, I'm more moderate. I think now that the election's over, we can take a quick nap.
She's a big
But
napper.
after that,
Turn pages.
after that, we
Dig
know
holes.
this. We are getting right back to work.
Yes, we are. After we take a nap. Woo!
I'm ready.
She's ready.
And I am certain that there is no one who is going to fight harder than our governor. And I am so very proud of him. So will you please join me in welcoming
He's taking a lot of blame there, Gwen.
the governor of the great state of Minnesota, Tim Walz.
Woo, Tim, you did it. Woo! You kicked ass to the national stage. Woo! He's a small town. Where is he? Turn the music off so I don't have to freaking copyright here. Boom, where is he? I was born in a small town. This small town just like you. Where is he? Where is that? Like, get out there, Tim. Did you not hear her? Your skanks out there talking about you. Come on, Tim, get out there. Where is he? Where is it? Hey, where's Tim? Did Tim leave? Is he back there with one of the male interns? What's up with Tim? Tim, get up there, Tim. Yeah, there we go. Give him the pranams. Yeah, there we are. Ooh, give us a hug. Boom. Small town. Boom. Look, give her a laugh. Go, give her a little pat on the back. Boom. There you go, Tim. Woo. We're not going to watch all this. Gwen's the star of the show.
Thank you.
I like the way you wave. I like the way that you wave there, Tim. Very, like your frowny face.
You've been here.
Walz.
Thank you, Minnesota.
Thanks, Minnesota. You guys are the best.
Thank you.
I couldn't wait to leave you guys behind, but now I'm back. You know, it's like I want to keep my job.
Well, I don't know about you, but I've had a week, so I know you have too. But let me just start out by saying it's great to be home.
It's great to be home.
And I do want to start a huge thank you and an I love you to Minnesota's First Lady, to Gwen. Thank you, Gwen.
Oh, Gwen, thanks. You're wonderful, Gwen. Make some more of those ginger snaps. They were hidden during the election.
And to our amazing kids, Hope and Gus, they are everything to us. So thank you.
Where's been Gus been? We haven't seen Gus since the night. Like, you've been hiding Gus away.
And a big thank you to my family. My mom is here, who I want to say thank you to, Darlene. So,
Darlene. What Darlene?
We did okay, didn't we? We did okay. She did a great job. I think she's as surprised as anybody that we're here, but and a huge thank
Darlene
you
was just unrealistic about my potential to be vice president.
to Vice President Kamala Harris.
Boy, she was great. Look at that frowny face. Look at that frowny face.
First, for the faith that she placed in me, but more importantly, for the powerful and joyful campaign that she ran.
It was powerful and joyful. I mean, it's amazing she lost so freaking horribly. I mean, so much joy. I don't know how something so joyful could lose.
For her leadership and forever grateful for her friendship. Also, a huge thank you to my staff, both the folks who worked on this
Okay, so let's get down a little bit here. Okay, wait, they just said something important.
Today to tell you this. We can do it. No, that's the wrong one. We will do it, and we'll do it together. We will.
Whoa, yeah. Whoa.
So for now, I just want to say thank you, Minnesota.
Thanks to Minnesota. You guys have been great. I said that before.
I think sometimes we can be quick to judge people who don't agree with us, to assume that they act out of cruelty or fear or self-interest. I don't think that kind of judgment is helpful right now.
No, it's not. Let's endorse Trump. Just get behind Trump.
I don't think it's right. I think we ought to swallow, and this is me in this as
He likes to swallow. I mean, he definitely is a big swallower.
thinking about myself.
I mean, not Kamala level, but you know.
A little bit of pride and look a little harder to find common ground with our neighbors who didn't vote like we did in this election. Maybe we won't agree on every issue. Hell, maybe we won't agree on any issue.
Yeah, you won't.
But maybe when the campaign signs come down, we all get a little break from the rhetoric and the TV ads and the fundraising texts, and I'm sorry about those.
Yeah, those were nuts. I didn't get any, but, you know, I know they're horrible. I mean, they were just obnoxious.
Maybe when we get a little break from this campaign that we're in.
I mean, you guys raised $1 billion in 3 months, and you blew it, and now you're $20 million in debt? Holy fuck. And that's the outcome? You spent $1 billion for that, right? $1 billion fucking dollars. Like those goofy ads and all that shit you did for that piece of shit campaign and result. You blew $1 billion on one of the worst freaking purchases in the history of the world.
And we'll be able to look at each other and see not enemies but neighbors. And maybe
It's just kumbaya, Tim. Bring it.
we'll be able to sit down over coffee or a Diet Mountain Dew and just
Mountain Dew, because that's really good for you. That's a wonderful dish. Look at him. There he goes. Getting ready to
talk about our kids. Talk about the lives we want to build for them. Talk about the things that really matter. How we treat each other. How we look out for each other.
Boom, all those things. Let's move forward. Let's get to the end of this thing. A little bit forward here.
And with compassion, with dedication, and with joy. And let's keep making Minnesota an example for the rest of this great nation. I love this country. I love this state. I love this job. And I'm not done fighting for Minnesota, not by a long shot.
Not by a long shot.
So thank you, Minnesota. Thank you, and let's get it done.
Let's get, boom. Okay, then they come out. I'm going to show you this. I watched this end of this on CNN. And Jake Tapper, let me show you. Let's go to that.
Thank you, and let's get it done.
So they plays this crappy music. He goes, gives a little wave. His wife comes back out. His thing, oh my God, that was so great. She's looking really somber. She wants to fight. She put her hand up in the air, waves strongly. That was the turn the page thing. She gives the pranams. Pranams, everybody, pranams. Pranams. Let's do the pranams. Wave to everybody. She's got a furrowed brow. And look at this guy's frown. He's just got this monster frown. Oh, that's his resting face is that frown. Like an upside down smile. And that's, a politician's got to have a fake fucking smile. You just do. And you know, I mean, you got the crazy wife and then frown. Like, you know. And then the end of this thing here.
All right, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the running mate of Vice President Kamala Harris. There he is with his wife, Gwen Walz. A bittersweet message talking about his time on the campaign trail. Bragging a little bit about his record in Minnesota, which will no doubt start speculation about 2028.
You know, they're stuck with this guy. Not that he's going to be their candidate in 2028, but he's going to run. Because now they've made him into a national figure. And I think he did disastrously. You know, there was two people, Joy Reid and that, you know, woman I showed you earlier in this video. The, you know, the doctor, whatever her name was, who's a political, you know, she's a political science teacher or whatever, said that they ran a flawless campaign. That their campaign was flawless, but it was far from flawless. I mean, picking the wrong candidate, yes, but they picked the wrong vice president. Remember, Kamala Harris said she didn't sleep for 2 days. But everybody wanted Josh Shapiro. Remember, they were rolling Josh Shapiro out. I never heard of the guy before. He was giving those Obama-like speeches, you know, where he had the Obama cadence, right? And he was their superstar. He was high energy. And he would more than likely be able to deliver them Pennsylvania. If anybody could, it was him, right? And maybe nobody could. But certainly Tim Walz wasn't going to do it. But the problem was Josh Shapiro, who was Jewish, came out in such support for Israel that the liberal college kids who were anti the genocide that's going on there named him Genocide Josh. And they just didn't feel like they could afford a scandal or some, you know, controversy. They had another guy, I forget his name, you know, an older white guy, and he had some sort of like little bit of baggage. And they looked at Tim Walz being kind of like the all-American, semi-conservative, middle-of-the-ground dad. But when they didn't vet him enough to realize that he was really hyper-liberal, much more liberal than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris wasn't all that liberal. She was liberal on a few things. I mean, I don't know even how you'd even describe her. But the Walzes are very liberal. And he looks like, you know, 10 years older than he actually is. He's like my age. He looks like he's in his 70s. And he's weird. And like he said the word weird, but then you saw his family, you saw his wife, and then you saw him. And he just did very poorly. He did very poorly in the debate. And he lied about things, and he had lots of lies. But the biggest problem was that he was liberal. And he was liberal in a way. You know, Bernie Sanders is fiscally liberal. Bernie Sanders is a fiscal socialist. But, you know, maybe not as liberal as Tim Walz on all these social issues, right? And they wanted a guy who was just some average, middle-of-the-road, middle Westerner, you know, Midwesterner, that people could identify with, and that they could get some of the white guy vote, right? They wanted, you know, they needed a white guy. They were looking for a white guy to balance out the person of color, the woman, and the person of color that Kamala Harris was, right? And they got a guy who was so liberal and so weird that he actually hurt her instead of, you know, the kind of dynamic person they would have got with Josh Shapiro. And so, you know, either way, he is a national figure now. He's maybe got some sort of a following. And he's got people that are going to push him for the presidency in 2028. And so now they got that albatross hanging around their necks. I mean, I don't think he'll do very well. But his name, you know, you become a national figure. Obama became a national figure when he delivered that speech at the DNC. And he became a star, right? A guy that was not really known about, but he had that cadence, he had that way of speaking, and he delivered a speech there. And he was very impressive to the Democratic establishment. And Hillary Clinton was already a shoo-in, but they rolled out Barack Obama, and he had so much more enthusiasm that he overshadowed her, and he beat her, right? And that led to the whole debacle with Trump because, you know, Hillary Clinton was so unlikable that people gave Trump a shot. I mean, that was so weird, right? But, you know, the liberal stuff that they've really forcefully pushed on people is now being rejected. The socially liberal. He's a social liberal. You know, Bernie Sanders is a policy, you know, conservative liberal. I mean, a financial liberal, right? But conservative liberal. He's a financial liberal. And Tim Walz is a social liberal on social issues. And the way he handled, you know, all this stuff, the post-George Floyd stuff and all the, you know, the way he handled Minnesota was a nightmare. It was a bad record to run on. But even, you know, within that was just the way he acted. And it wasn't this guy that, you know, this coach that they rolled out. You know, he wasn't even a real coach. He was a assistant coach. You know, they were calling him coach, right? No, you're assistant coach. You're not coach. I mean, you might be called coach by your team, but you're a teacher, and then a governor, and then you were assistant coach, and, you know, kind of a weird guy, right? And so, you know, it was one bad decision after another. I mean, they pulled it off the best they could, but they were pulling off something shady. And it was great when that donor said that Joe Biden endorsing Kamala Harris was a big FU of the party because he knew she had no chance of winning. She knew nobody liked her, and she didn't have a record. And the people around her, everyone knew. Even Joe Biden, who was senile, knew that she wasn't going to get elected. I mean, the whole thing, you know, was just, they were infighting. It was it was a whole mess, and was these two grenades of Joe Biden's senility and Kamala Harris's unlikability that were going to go off. And I don't know if this was intentionally planned so Donald Trump would get a second term or whatever this thing is, you know, in terms of being manipulated. But you got to understand that Trump, they wanted him. The reason this went the way it did is that people who in power wanted Trump. And now Trump's going to do, you know, their bidding to whatever it is, whether he knows about it or not. And they'll find a way to get him. They know how to work him. They know how to, you know, push him in the right direction. And Trump will do it. Like, Trump will do whatever they want to do. And I can't imagine it's something good. Like, it isn't going to be Make America Great Again. I was going to end the video there, but there's one comment I wanted to get to. I saw it came out on my phone. I hadn't looked through the comments yet, but once in a while a YouTube comment comes through on my phone. But anyways, here it is. The person writes, oh, I got to make it bigger. You are correct. You are correct. The Earth isn't spherical or flat because it is all Maya, but an illusion. But in the illusion, the word planet means small plane. The whole word's a stage. You know, it's the you are correct that I want to comment on here. Because the whole idea that the Earth would be Maya or illusion would mean that it's not provable, right? Like, you are correct, you know, like this person knows. It's something you can't know. You can never know if the world's an illusion, right, or Maya. Because the data you would use to figure out the world is an illusion is in itself material in nature, the scientific data or whatever you would do, right? Whatever you would do to know something. Because knowing is really about science and the physical reality. Like, you know things that are physical. You feel things that are spiritual, right? You feel things that are spiritual. They're not, you don't know them. It's a feeling. It is something that's, you know, the nature of the heart, right? We've talked about that before. The nature of the heart versus the nature of the mind. The mind in itself has to do with the material reality, that you have concrete reality around you, third dimensional reality, that you have physical reality, that you can, you know, see with your eyes, and, you know, that's an illusion. Like color's an illusion, right? It's the absence of green, that the color is reflecting back green. The leaves are absorbing every other color and reflecting back green, right? Light in itself is an illusion, these things that you can see. And so if you take away your eyes, if you're a blind person, then how do you know these things? Well, through touch, through smell, through your other senses, right? Your senses are all illusionary because the physical reality is illusionary. And so what's illusionary about the physical reality, and that it's a video game or a simulation, is that you have a soul that is your real essence. That's what it means by illusionary. That your soul, your true essence, isn't a physical person. Your soul creates the physical person as a vehicle, just like God creates everything in the universe, but is none of those things, right? Those are just a manifestation of the divine energy in physical form or spiritual form or whatever it is, right? So the whole thing being illusionary, there's no way to prove it, right? There's no way to prove you have a soul, because proof is something that's physical, something that exists in the physical world, right? And so these are ideas. You know, this there was a movie in which Jake Gyllenhaal played this guy who was there was a train. It was a military operation, right? He was some sort of his soul was being beamed into a train that had been hit by a terrorist attack, and he would get put on the train like 2 minutes before the bomb went off, and they kept on sending him back to the train to get data that would tell them who the terrorist was, right? And there's a girl on the train, of course there was, and he falls in love. Because for him, these, you know, whatever the 10 minutes or 5 minutes he was on the train became a lifetime. But then he realizes that when he's not in the train, he doesn't have really a physical body. He has the idea of a physical body, but he doesn't know where he is, right? Because he was a soldier who was basically dead, who was in like a coma. And he had, you know, this period of time where his soul was still there in the body, and they were taking the soul and putting it into this other body, right? And, you know, this was, of course, he ends up stealing the other guy's body because that guy was going to die anyway, and living happily ever after with the girl, because that's the kind of, you know, movies we make, right? But they robbed the guy of his death, right? There was a death process. If the guy did have a soul, then the soul was going to go somewhere else, but they just grabbed it and stuck it in some other guy's body because, you know, if this is an illusion and you do have a soul, then death really isn't all that important, right? Like, it's important to you because you're not going to be the same person again. Like, this is the end of this person that you are. You know, the life is, you know, in terms of death, whoever you are as a person, when you die, you know, your soul goes wherever it goes, but you're the person that you were, the body that you had, and the life that you led no longer exists. And so even in that sense, it's an illusion, right? Because all of this is temporary. You know, if there's points on a timeline where things either live or die or exist in, you know, age and exist in one form or another, then it's illusionary, based in its very definition, right? And so understanding that, like, it's nothing that you could ever prove. And so this person writes this comment, and they say, You are correct. The Earth isn't spherical or flat because it is all Maya. But in the illusion, the word planet means small. The whole world's a stage. You are correct. Like, you arrogant prick, right? Like, who are you to say, thanks God for stopping by and leaving a comment? Like, I don't know and you don't know, right? That was my whole point about the thing. That we don't know. It certainly isn't flat. Like, the part of it being flat, I guess the guy is almost saying the word planet means small plane. Yeah, that's just the English language. Because they thought it was flat when they invented the word or whatever. And so it's just the word that people use. The word planet means small plane. Yeah, but that's just because English is, the language we're using. There's other words for Earth. There are other words for the planet. And so, it doesn't matter what the word is. Like, people keep on harping back to the word. Like, English was the, defining language. It isn't. Like, Sanskrit was the first language. In terms of this bunch, our 200,000-year-old human history here. But there was other humans before that. I mean, it's, there's, in terms of the, any of these things, right? But the idea that it's an illusion means that nothing's provable. And anytime you get into the spiritual, like, you can't prove the soul. Like, the definition of soul, when it was first discovered, was something that can't be burned. It doesn't have a weight. It's colorless. It's, there's no physical attributes, right? Like, they went through this description of something that there's no way of, like, seeing. There was no material way of proving that there was a soul, because it had zero properties. Your life force, your essence, has zero physical properties. It can't be judged or seen by the physical universe. They have weighed people right before they died and right after, and it was something like 23 grams. The body loses 23 grams as soon as the soul leaves. And that's not true. Like, at least in terms of the soul leaving, it has no weight. The soul leaving makes no physical impression, right? The soul is the energy, the essence of the life force that keeps your body moving and keeps your consciousness going, right? Because you could be alive and not be conscious. You can be in a coma. But your consciousness, right, the idea of a soul is there's these subtle bodies, and one of them is your mind. One of these, there's something like 4 subtle bodies, and, these energetic parts of your soul. The soul is like the purest, and then it has these other layers, and one of them is a mind. Like, your brain is there, but you have to have a mind, which is spiritual. Like, you can have a brain that doesn't think because you're dead, right? The brain itself is there, but it's, there's a field of consciousness called the mind, right? And so having a brain and having a mind is, you can't have a mind without a brain. Like, the mind there is there, but it only exists if you have a physical body. And then when you die, your soul doesn't have a mind like that. It feels, right? It has a life force, and it has, in a sense, knowledge in the, etheric form. And so all of this stuff is not provable. Like, these are ideas of existence, right? The essence of existence. That's my point about all this different stuff. You really can't prove anything then. Because if the world is Maya, then everything's illusionary. So anything that you prove on a physical level is all based in the physical properties of the illusion, right? The illusion is physical. The fact that there's physical reality, but there's, atomic particles coming together and making your whole body. There are things in your body that aren't your body. Microbes and things like this. They're independent organisms, and there's all your cells. So if you break it down to this kind of level, a subatomic level, then, what is your body? Like, you see it as a whole, but it's a variety of different parts working together, right? And you take away the soul, and none of it works. And so all of this is just delusional, right? This is how our society is. You can look at the Earth as a whole planet, and all of us being connected to it and part of it, independently working to keep the planet going, or, whatever it is, right? Destroying the planet like a cancer. And so there's multiple ways of viewing life on planet Earth, or the Earth itself, or the universe. Like, the Earth is a part of the universe. And it's an independent aspect of it, but it's part of a solar system. It's part of a larger universe, right? All these things. And so all of that is illusionary because it looks like physical reality and it looks tangible. You know, something you can touch, taste, see, smell, right? You can, experience with your senses. The weight of it, right? And all of it. But it's predicated on the fact that you have a soul, in terms of the spiritual belief, that is your real essence that has many different bodies. Like we'll have, hundreds of lives and exist in hundreds of bodies and various forms throughout the universe over, trillions of years of existence or whatever long the universe exists. But then the universe itself implodes on itself eventually and is in latent form, and none of it exists, right? Not your soul, not God, none of these things exist until there's a catalyst and it all starts over again. And so that's the nature of existence. And, it seems like incredibly, you're incredibly small then, right? If you look at yourself as a grain of sand on the beach or in the desert or something, the smallness of your existence in the scope of the universe or the scope of the size of the earth, and then the idea of the soul, when you're talking about, almost an infinite amount of etheric beings and energetic beings and things like this. It's an immense kind of concept, right? Beyond our mind's ability to conceptualize that kind of scope and depth and things. And so we don't know shit. Like, that's the whole point. Like, it's all like just an illusion. You are correct, sir. You are correct in your assessment. Well, I don't know, and you don't know either. Like, that's the point. The point about it is, it's, we want to get to the bottom of things, but you're never going to get to the bottom of things when you're in an illusionary, situation. There's a moment in the movie where Jake Gyllenhaal realizes he doesn't have a body when he's not in this guy's body on the train, right? And he's communicating. He speaks to the person in charge. He's like in some kind of iron lung kind of thing where his body is just barely alive and he has a limited time before his soul leaves. And so they're trying to get him to figure out the situation on the train before he really dies. And he's like, am I dead? Like, where am I? Like, where am I when I'm not in this body, right? It's kind of interesting from that, standpoint, right? Because, it is illusionary, right? It's just, there's some kind of, realness to physical life. It seems so real. And that's what's, that's like the nature of a good illusion, right? That it seems like it's something. Just like your dreams seem so real when you're dreaming. When you're having a dream, you're like, I think this is a dream because I'm flying. And somehow you realize that it must be a dream because you're doing things in the dream that you can't do in physical reality, right? But how is your dream any less of a, of a reality than reality when you're waking, right? Maybe your dreams are the real reason you're here. That your waking life is, just something that you do so that you can dream, right? Like, who's to say which is, the more tangible reality? What's more important? Your dream life or your waking life, right? Your meditative life or your, your physical life. Your life with your eyes open, your life with your eyes closed. Like, what's the difference? In terms of the consciousness that's there, if it's all illusionary. But going back to, and I don't know what this guy's commenting on. I don't even remember what I was talking about. Obviously, it was the flat Earth because of the reference in the comment. But what I was saying, because I've said this before, if this is illusionary, which I believe it is, right? Within this illusion, if this is a video game, well, there's different ways of looking at it. Like in a video game, how does it work? That wherever you are, wherever you got to the horizon in which you can see. And so for me, I have I have a window that I have a kind of an odd angle to look at, right? There's a room that I'm in. And I can hear, like my son was just walking around, so I can hear other parts of the house, right? And so whatever I can hear and whatever I can see and whatever I can experience with my senses is what the earth is right now for me, right? And beyond that, it doesn't exist. And then, you get a call from somebody on the other side of the world, and they're, that part exists, you and the person you're having a conversation. But, in terms of like a simulation, a video game, it's only the part that you can see on the screen. That's the only part that exists in the video game. Like as you move through the video game, there's different aspects, but it's you're walking into something and it's your line of sight that you can see, because the video games are 100% based on sight, right? And so with, you know, a more complex illusion, there would be that. Like, there's nothing beyond your comprehension of what you can see with or feel with your senses. That would be the idea behind it being like a video game or a sophisticated video game. If it's, you know, something where, you know, we're all experiencing different parts of this video game at the same time, you know, you're thinking about the time zones, you know, in terms of the round Earth model versus the flat Earth model. The flat Earth model doesn't work because there's time zones and other things like that, right? In the sense of that it's an illusion. Like, in the illusion, it's something, right? And, you know, it doesn't have to be anything if it's a video game, right? Because you're not, unless you're out in space, like, unless you could actually travel up in space, you know. But if you're going to think it's the fucking firmament because you're really, you know, believing that the Bible's the word of God and that space is the firmament, then you're kind of fucked, because the Bible isn't that even great a book in terms of the illusionary world, and it's certainly wrong about a bunch of shit, right? And the nature of God in the Old Testament is just, you know, kind of an abomination of, I mean, in terms of the way that they present God as being some narcissistic, jealous prick, right? But within the illusion, the flat Earth model doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't. So people saying that they're flat earthers, is my point. You're debunking round Earth. So you're round Earth debunkers. You're not flat earthers. You get rid of the Bible, get rid of the firmament. If you're looking for scientific data to prove that the Earth is not round, then you're not using the Bible. You're using whatever data that you're using to prove that the Earth isn't round. And you could prove it or not, right? But that doesn't make it flat. Like, I keep on saying that. So just the term itself is a bad term. Like, it's not accurate, and it's not what the flat Earth movement's about. The flat Earth movement is debunking. Hey, they'll say to you, what do they say to you when they're trying to mock you? You guys believe that you're on a sphere spinning through the universe. That's what they say to the round earthers, right? That's what you guys believe. Well, then that's nothing to do with the flat Earth, right? It means that we're not on a round Earth. That's what you're looking at. And you're looking at it in a scientific way, right? The round Earthers at least have a working model that, in terms of the time zones and the other aspects of the Earth and the year, you know, the years, there's years, right? There's seasons. And so the seasons are, you know, fairly predictable in terms of there's a time to grow shit, right? But in other places of the world, they have 2 seasons where it rains for a period of time. But the temperature fluctuates. It's a fluctuation in temperature because there's less fucking sunlight, right? There's less sunlight every day. If we were looking up at if the sun was spinning around like on a mobile because of like a mobile, you know, for a baby, like spinning around some unknown celestial object with the moon and the sun spinning around this, you know, above us, it would be the same amount of light every day. There would be no fluctuation in it, right? There would be no, you know, there wouldn't be a little bit longer each day, right? It would be the same day. The days would have 12 hours of sunlight every day for the whole year. That's how that model would work. So that model doesn't exist. It's a bad model, like even in an illusionary type of situation. And the arrogance that exists in the flat earthers because of that, right? Because you might be able to prove the Earth isn't round, again, you know, but it isn't flat. So you know, what difference is it, right? Because you're disproving like the nature of the model that everybody believes in, but you're not regressing back to when people believed it was flat because we didn't have the ability for plane travel, and nobody thought about how, you know, that model worked. They just went outside and looked like the Earth was flat because you had no, you know, visual reference point to it being round. And people didn't travel. There's no time zones. There isn't any of that shit, right? There's no plane travel. There's none of these things. There's no global connection. Everybody was local. And so, of course, the idea would be that it's flat. If there's no times and no time zones, and, you know, people didn't think about the seasons and why the seasons are there, and they just figured out whatever simple explanation for those things. But now we have a more sophisticated technological, you know, advanced civilization, but people who are more remedial in their, they're not as good or strong as people who lived in the past in the village-based system. And so you have those two problems, right? Where people are crazier and more fucked up, but they have, better science and better understanding of the nature of physical reality. That's, again, illusionary in its very nature. So anyways, you can't know shit, right? There's no saying you are correct. Like, no one's there to say, hey, you are correct. Like, am I? Well, why would you be the authority? Oh, great one, right? If you said, I think you're right, because you agree with me, but neither of us know, right? That's how you would say it. I mean, when I present things here, I always know, like, it's all bullshit, right? Like that's my perception. It's whatever ideas that are flowing through me in terms of a channeling type situation or being a vessel or a conduit. There's that, but there's no way that you'll ever know. Like, there's a lot of things you'd never get to the bottom of. Pretty much everything. That's my point. In a world where history is somebody else's story, everything is subjective. Like, you're telling your side of the story, somebody else is telling their side of the story. And so history isn't, in terms of real. Oftentimes, like even on a criminal situation, you're trying to figure out what was done was right or wrong. And it's based in arbitrary laws, right? So murder is okay if you're defending yourself, right? If somebody is trying to kill you and you murder them, you kill them first, well, it's fair because that person was intending to murder you, but you're basing that on the other person's intention. And if that intention is they're holding a gun, and if they shot a bullet at you, well, you can say, yeah, that they were trying to kill you, but that's something that's maybe they weren't. Like, maybe they thought there was someone behind you who was shooting a bullet at them, right? Like, there's different explanations. And so the rules, when you're trying to put somebody in prison for what, right? Like, why is prison the solution for that? Like a murder or stealing something, we're going to lock you up and put you in a a timeout for 10 years, but parole if like you get a generous judge. And so there's no, like, you can say things are justified. There has to be some spiritual justification for the things that happen to you, the bad things that happen to you, right? Some things just don't appear to have any relevance to the punishment that you're receiving. I've talked about past lives and some of the stories in the Mahabharata where there's a guy who was just a wonderful person. He's probably the best guy in the Mahabharata. At the end, he's got like 100 arrows pierced through his body, and he's laying on the points of the arrows on the ground, and he's laying horizontal with the arrows supporting his weight of his body. And he's laying there, and like Krishna comes up to him, and he's like, "What the fuck, I lived a great life. I did everything I was supposed to, and here I am. And I've looked in my past lives, and I've looked 100 lives back, and there's no justification for this." And Krishna says, "Yeah, your 101st life, you were a prince, and you took a snake and you threw it onto some thorns, and now you're experiencing the consequences of doing that. 100 lives later, even though you have a great life, this was the one thing you did wrong, right?" Like, shit like that. Of course, that's not provable or whatever it is, right? But there's lots of things that happen on the material world to good people that don't make any sense. But maybe those things are, they're beneficial in some way, right? But what I'm saying here, going back to this criminal situation and jurors having to judge the guilt of somebody else, right? You're sitting on a jury. And to really be able to do that, you'd have to look at the person and know all about them and know about their situation. And what they did was criminal. Was it justified? Well, did they have a case for doing what they did, right? Was it just some bullshit victim consciousness, or was there something that they were owed, or, whatever it might be, right? And so, like, all this stuff is, like, arbitrary and subjective and, based in, the conceptual idea of America as a country that people put together in a society where there'd be laws, and how are you going to deal with criminal behavior? Like, if you're going to have a society and there's people who do things that are wrong, that hurt other people, how do you deal with those people? What do you do with those people? If somebody keeps on hurting other people in some way or another, stealing from them or wronging them, well, there has to be, you're going to have frontier justice where people get together and they just decide, all right, let's go beat the shit out of that guy, or kill him or whatever, because he keeps on hurting other people, right? And so, like, is that justified? Well, on a physical reality, you have to deal with problems and people that are are fucking up the system, right? That are, making the thing run poorly. But there's a way to do it. This is the Sizemore method, where your heart would tell you what to do. And if you did something, your heart was unsettled by it. Your heart felt like I did something wrong, and you were going to sleep every night, and it was bothering you, right? Like, I wish I didn't do that. That was a mistake. I feel bad about it in my heart. Like, I seem justified mentally, but when I look at it, I feel it. I feel bad about it. Or you would say something that was hurtful to other people, and it would hurt their heart, and you would feel it in your heart. Like, I've experienced this through the Sizemore method, the development of the heart as a instrument, where, I'll say something, and I'll feel the pain immediately, like the other person's feeling, that I've caused by whatever I've said. And, I do that a lot because I say a bunch of fucking mean shit, right? And so, there's that element, like where you would feel something on a soul level that would tell you what's right or what's wrong and what you should do. And it would, you would warn you against taking certain action, and you would, use patience, and you wouldn't make impulsive fucking decisions like Donald Trump and, all these people, like reactionary decisions. You would wait and allow the dust to settle. And so there wouldn't be some, rush to some, rash decision that you would regret later because you used your gut, your anger, and your hatred to decide for you in a moment's notice what to do, instead of just sitting back and allowing the dust to settle and then looking at it from a spiritual perspective and reflecting on it and, before making these fucking decisions, right? Based in just whims or, whatever emotional desire or something you had at a moment, right? And so, like, the pinnacle of evolution is not knowing things mentally. It would be like your heart telling you, oh yeah, God doesn't want me to do this. I think I should do this, but now that I've waited for God to communicate to me, and God has said to me, or I can feel, I feel that God doesn't want me to do this, or God's ordered me to do this. And you would just go about life that way, and you would make no mistakes because everything would be divinely instructed. Anyways, just thought I'd add this. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.